All right, welcome back to the Good Fruit Show, where we are on a mission to explore how we can discover a deep sense of meaning and purpose in our lives. Today, we are welcoming back my friend Riley Jarvis for part two of his life story. In part one, we discussed Riley's alter ego, Richie Rich, when he was very young, what growing up in Canada was like, and their notorious holiday called Canada Day, the amazing opportunities and trips he was blessed to go on with his family back then, going through divorce at a young age and how that changed his life, getting lost in the rich fantasy world of World of Warcraft, his first job, including one savory coworker with a personality that he still remembers to this day, figuring out what to do after high school, and the ignition of his dreams to pursue a freedom-based lifestyle, all the way to his hallmark 10-month trip to China, where he went from almost being homeless to meeting the tribe of his dreams, and just having a thrilling time there. So if you haven't watched that first episode, I highly recommend going back and checking it out. Riley, thank you so much for being so gracious with your time and sharing your stories with us. And yeah, welcome back to the show, man.
Appreciate it, CJ. It's great to be back and diving in. Last time we went to places that I haven't even thought about myself before. So yeah, some great questions.
That's cool, man. So yeah, we left off at the Lamb of God concert, and we were talking about the 10-month trip in China. You know, you kind of spent the first few months trying to find your home there, and getting kind of really close to the end of that 3 months, you were like kind of frantically trying to find a place to live and get settled in for the rest of the 7 months, because it's like, what are you gonna do? And yeah, we left off at the Lamb of God concert and the thrilling event that was. So if we just want to pick up kind of in that area, we can dive into it.
Yeah, sure. So I guess the last thing I was saying is, yeah, I get to Shanghai, super sick, and part of me just wants to go home. Like I'm 21 years old, so get into Shanghai, ears are just killing me, sinuses are inflamed, and I there's the Lamb of God concert happening. So I get to the Lamb of God concert, taking this tuk tuk, and then it was one of the best shows of my life. But just the
By the
spontaneity
way,
of it.
by the way, what is a tuk tuk?
So tuk tuk, I think there's different definitions, but it's like one of those. It could be, I guess, like a bicycle. Like it could have an engine or not have an engine. This one didn't have an engine. It's literally like a bicycle with like two seats in the back, and there's usually like a tent around if it was raining or something. And it's really popular in Asia. So, if you can't find a taxi, you can take one of these tuk tuks and you just get in, you'll kind of weave in and throughout traffic. And this one in particular, like, China and what India's traffic is like. And yeah, we were weaving between traffic. Cars were incoming. I literally thought I was going to be hit by a car on the way to the concert. It was pretty crazy. And yeah, just the fact that like we finally made it, couldn't find a taxi before, thought I was going to be late. And there's no Uber back then, right? So you're just trying to look for free taxis where nobody's inside and wave them down. And at the time in China, not all taxis would accept like white people or like foreigners. It was just like a thing. It was just the way it was in China at that time. Maybe it's changed now. So it's just so difficult to get a taxi. And then I remember just jumping in that tuk tuk. It just came out of the blue. He asked me if I needed a ride, and yeah, just like an old guy, part delirious, just like singing to himself as we're making our way through traffic as I'm going through the concert. Give him the instructions on a written Chinese piece of paper. No idea if he's going to the right place. Anyway, we finally get there. I think after like half an hour, 45 minutes, and I can hear the show upstairs, but I still don't have a ticket. So yeah, I go upstairs, and the guy's like, "Hey, I've got a free ticket. Do you want a ticket for the show?" I'm like, "Yeah, perfect." Yeah, I got it for like half price because the show just was about to start. Literally get inside, and the first song just begins playing. It was so crazy, just the timing of it all, and just the energy of that place. And I'll never forget. It was like a scene from a Chinese mafia movie or something. There was this Chinese guy. Like first, just the aura of an atmosphere of this place. It was like red lighting, and there was this guy up on the second floor uh, who was sitting kind of cross-legged, um, and he had these glasses on, and he was just smoking a cigar. And all I could see within the red, dimly lit lighting was just like his silhouette. and he was just watching the show, but he had just like such a calm composure and demeanor. I'm like, this looks like something straight from the movies. Like, I don't know who this Mr. X is, just like up there in silhouette, but I just saw the reflection like into glasses, and the glass he was behind. Someone of importance, clearly, but he was just up there by himself, sitting on a chair, just watching the show. While everyone down below is just like, you know, the head banging and everything else. He just it's as if he's listening to like classical music. It was hilarious, just like looking back and seeing that difference. But yes, something straight out of a movie. So yeah, after that show finished, I think I went back to my hotel and then just reflected on the night of how amazing it was. But any details in there, I can touch on more if you want.
Yeah, I mean, you said that your ears were hurting and your sinuses were inflamed. Like, what was going on?
I just had a flu. So before I flew from Canada, I just had, a really bad flu where you're just like all nasally, congested, kind of hard to breathe. Um, and just like around your eyes and your forehead and your temples, it's just, really inflamed. Like your inner ear drums are just hurting. And then you add flying into the mix, you're flying for like 14 hours. That was a long trip and my head was pounding. Then you get to this place where you don't even like I just felt like I didn't sleep for that whole entire 14-hour plane ride. And then you land in China and it's like all the smells, you get the culture shock. So it was just like everything combined into one. And then just going to the concert and everything too. It was just one of those things that really stressful getting there. But yeah, it definitely makes a story and one of those experiences that you'll never forget.
Definitely. So, did you go to the concert like pretty close after when you got there?
Yeah, it was I'm trying to think when I got there. I think I got there like really early in the morning, and then the concert was that night.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like same day.
And so you got the chaos of traveling, being sick. You land there.
Yeah,
I mean, you're trying to figure out probably like the entire culture. It's a different culture. They speak a different language. So you got that added stress on top of being sick. It sounds pretty chaotic, but it sounds like you had a good nightcap.
yeah, it definitely was. It just one of those unforgettable experiences from the age of 21 of just like wild and like everybody my age was traveling over to, England or Italy or like, you know, France, somewhere that's a little bit more safe, kind of like it's all part of the Western world. But here was just like something so crazy. I didn't know anything about China really until I just experienced that firsthand. So those are sort of the moments you never forget. And that's why I recommend to people like anybody should travel like from that age if you can, because other people I've talked to, they look back at those moments and you also make friendships that'll last the rest of your life because you meet a lot of like-minded people. So even like 15 years later, I still are like best friends with these people. And when we meet, it might be a few years later. It's like no days pass. We're just um, they're like soul brothers or sisters.
Not only that, but you talked about this on the webinar video that you shared with me, where you talked about this story, and you had kind of mentioned like when you go to a foreign culture and you're experiencing this completely new thing where you have to like be extremely resourceful, like you're using Google Translate to be able to communicate with some of the people there. But you were kind of talking about how it activates like this whole different sense of humanity within us, and it almost like forces you to tap into your inner potential. Um, do you remember that part of the webinar that I'm talking about?
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like, we're so insular within our own cultures and countries that we think this is just the way it is because, you talk a lot about this a lot, but like before the age of 7, when our personality is being formed, that's within a culture, our parents' beliefs, society's beliefs, and everything else. But then from, you're in your young 20s and you go to this entirely new place that basically rewrites all those rules and what you once thought was true isn't the case. So then your brain sort of scrambles and is trying to find meaning within that. And it's like, well, is this the right thing? Is it the wrong thing? But after a while, you just kind of sit with it and you realize that like there's no right or wrong way. It's just a different way of doing things. And it made me realize, like looking back at Western culture, of what the pros and the cons of that are too. And so in the same way, we can kind of like transcend our own beliefs. And then that's like, well, what does that mean about who I am? what I used to think about myself within this confined glass box. But now, like, I'm outside of the glass box because of that travel and things like that. So it just totally changes, it shifts things, but it scrambles things. Like, it doesn't make sense right away. It's very confusing. But once you kind of come out of that, things settle, then you just kind of transcend it completely. And I think that's the phase, kind of like things scramble, feels uncomfortable, and then there's order. Like, there's chaos and order, chaos and order, chaos and order, and that's what entropy is all about. So yeah, very interesting. But I'm glad I got to do it at a younger age.
Yeah. No, exactly. It's kind of like like when you get a new job and you're just kind of thrown into the fire. Like a
Yeah,
manager just says, "Hey, go sell a new phone to someone," and you've never done it before.
yeah,
Like it throws you into this environment of chaos and it forces you to want to create order, to try and scramble and be resourceful enough to create some order. And that's kind of like sounds like the theme of what your China trip was all about.
yeah.
And so like looking back on it now, like how did that change you? How did that change like the way you see the world and your belief systems?
It made me realize that what I thought, like how much effort it was going to take of me thinking ahead of time, was like 25% of the effort that I thought it was going to take. Meaning that I basically, like, all the things I'm scared of, knowing that, of just throwing myself in this situation before my thoughts can even catch up. I know that I can do that in future situations, and it gave my brain proof and not promises that, like, I can go into this and know I'll be okay. And even though it was uncomfortable, I was like, well, I can do it before, I'll do it again, and the same thing's gonna happen. And sure enough, that was always the case. And it kind of became this routine of just like throw yourself in there and just see what happens, opposed to like trying to think about it and overanalyze it and all this theory around it. Because I did a lot of that before, so that was a big thing for me, of just throwing myself in and letting everything else catch up, and also just trusting my faculties of like, my brain has the answers, my conscious has the answer, and once I throw myself into it, it's going to come up with the answer that I need in that moment. Um, in that it's like just in time information versus just in case information. Just in case information is like, well, what if this, what if that? Let me read about it, da 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 da. How about, like, I'll throw myself in just in time when I need it, then go to that resource if I need it at that time. But it's like true reality. It's true objective reality when you just throw yourself into that situation. Like, that's what happens. And um, the more you do that, the more, and also I found, was shredding just like the layers of the onion into who I truly was. And, because we all have these egos and identities, but when you go through, you know, stuff can be forced in the fire. And when you, shed that stuff off, you get closer and closer to who you are and who I was and what my potential was. And I come out of that, I looked back and I was like, man, I felt like I was going through a wormhole at times, but I made it out and I'm still alive. I'm like pinching my cheeks. I'm still here. So it makes you realize that there's way more potential than you realize by doing it. And I feel very lucky because that triggered a series of events afterwards to, keep pushing my potential, despite the health setbacks that were soon to come after. It just helped in so many ways. And it also laid an anchor so that when my health was back in the future, of like what my potential was. And there was another side of me I just had to re-tap back into whenever that time would come.
Yeah, totally. It sounds like that really kind of laid some of the groundwork for some of your future endeavors, like your journey in entrepreneurship and, going into the health space where, there's a lot of risk involved and, becoming a
Yeah.
sleep consultant and kind of diving into this unknown territory, but you're using your resourcefulness and, trying to figure it out yourself. And so, but let's dive into like that 7 months because we talked a lot about the 3 months where you're kind of trying to figure everything out in China. Um, but then you have the 7 months where you kind of find your tribe, and I kind of want to learn about some of your experiences that you had after you found your tribe.
Yeah. So how did I find them in the first place? So first got to China. There was no Airbnb back then. It was all forum boards, especially in China, and very outdated forum boards that just looked like plain text. And people would post they're looking for a roommate, not looking for a roommate. Um, so I used these while I was in the hotel, and I found this woman. Her name was Lucy Liu, in the forum boards, and she was looking for a roommate. And it was like my only chance left because it was the last day in a totally sold out hotel before I had to check out that day. So it was kind of stressful because it was sort of on the verge of being homeless in China, with all my bags and everything. So I ended up finding her. Going, she showed me the apartment. Apartments in China at the time weren't that great. No air conditioning, not really any heat unless you have a heater. It just smells different. Like you go in the elevator, it feels like a factory elevator. You go upstairs, it's just concrete everywhere. There's like metal doors that slam. Like it's very like communist sort of Soviet bloc looking style. So that was a shell shock in itself. So I meet her. She was very nice though. I think she was 15 years older than me, but it was the only shot that I had. So yeah, we go in. She shows me the place. I'm like, sign me up. Like I was gonna say yes either way. I didn't care who she was, what the case were. I just needed somewhere to live. So yeah, I gave her the down deposit. But the perfect thing with her was her English was perfect. She taught Chinese people English. She also taught English people Chinese. So she was helping me with my Chinese, and I was studying before in Canada a little bit. But once you're there, it's so much different with the dialect and the tone and everything. So yeah, just being there. She had her own group of friends, so she introduced me to some of her other Chinese friends. And there was a place where I was in Nanjing. It's a city close to Shanghai. It's called 1912 in Chinese EGOER. It's kind of like this little party, clubs, bars. It's kind of district. Lots of karaoke's. It's just the Chinese style. There's like lots of bright lights. And I know it's changed since then, and parts of China have changed since then. But at the time, it was just incredible. Like there was this magic to it, where there was foreigners, especially Germans and quite a few Europeans. But there was a lot of German-based companies in China at the time. So I just met a lot of Germans through this Lucy Liu girl, and yeah, some of them were pretty wild. And we would just go to the clubs, we would go to the bars. I was 21, and we would just be out partying until like 7 in the morning until the sun came up. And then I had like a Chinese tutoring lesson, with actual Chinese professionals. That like 2 hours later, I just remember sitting in a coffee shop, Costa Coffee, with them and trying to teach them Chinese. And I was literally passing out in the chair. And they were paying me good money at the time for it. So, but I was just like trying to fit it all in because I knew I only had so much time in China. But yeah, it was just meeting these people. They were very smart and had their own jobs. But they were all older than me, and they were sort of an inspiration to me because they were able to achieve this China thing. And um, they were sort of like my caretakers at the time because they were like showing me what to do, where to go, how they manage the world, how they've been able to travel to all these countries. They introduced me to more people. And sometimes we would go to like some of these 5-star hotels in China I get an invite to, and I have to go looking for a dress shirt, that afternoon before the evening event. And we'd be just like on the penthouse or like the top floor of some really luxurious lounge, and we'd overlook the entire city. And it was like a really loungy, sort of futuristic place, and we got to see just everything. Uh, I kind of got all this stuff for free. It was kind of like a free experience, just because I was friends with these people, and it turned into just an incredible experience throughout that.
So what was something that, or what was like so it was Lucy Liu, and then who were kind of some of the other notable figures that you had met and that were kind of helping guide you along?
So there was a guy. His name was Andrew, and he was working for a German company named Siemens, and he was a really wild character. He loved to party, and all the girls were drawn to him. Like he just had this like magnetism to him. Always happy, always loud, very unconflicted. He saw everything his own way, very individual. Um, but he had a lot of the same interests as I did. And at the time, I was kind of reserved and a little bit introverted. So he was an inspiration for me because it was like, well, what could I become? And I'm in China new, like, when you go to a new place, nobody knows who you are, so you can really form any identity that you truly want. And so Andrew and I would party quite a bit, but he was a bit of a troublemaker. But I like that part about him. And I was warned by Lucy Liu about him to not hang out with him too much because he loved to party. He might be a bad influence on me because I was 21. Lucy Liu was probably 35. And, she was trying to protect me a little bit. And, but I kind of ignored her advice. I just kept partying on worse with Andrew. And, through him, we would, go on these adventures together. We go to Shanghai, some of his other German friends, and we would go to these like luxurious rooftop bars in Shanghai. If you see the scenes in like James Bond Skyfall, or like, it's called, you're on the Bund side, but when you look across, that area is called Ujiazui. I forget the English word, but that's where you see like the Shanghai Tower and everything, like what you would see on the postcards, and just like stunning, and seeing the opulence and meeting Chinese people who would invite you over for a drink and potentially give you business opportunities. And they want to be your friend, and using the chat application called WeChat. It's like a WhatsApp, but just for China. And they would invite you to more things. So it's like this network web just started expanding of like all these different opportunities, and like opulence, and like just true abundance. But in the same way, there was kind of this Zen like civilized part of the Chinese way that was just very interesting, very cool, that the Western culture, Western world and Western culture didn't necessarily have. And I was really drawn to that. So it was through a lot of these Shanghai trips that we would do together. Nanjing is still, it's about an hour and a half by bullet train. Um, it's still a very, very big city. Like probably the population is probably around, in the millions and millions. But Shanghai is probably what, like 30 million. So um, yeah, we just had so many like good food, cheap. Got to meet him, like other friends, a lot of other Germans, and Chinese girls. Purely we just became friends with. But everybody was just like very smart, or very into technology, very into like new era ways of thinking. That there's like a lot of luxurious malls, clean, like the Zen like Asian fusion part, kind of like a lot of Zen like trees, plants. Like think of like a Japanese Zen garden, but mixed with like a very super futuristic like technology and lights and everything like that at the time. It was very inspiring to be around, and just like the smells and the sounds and the sights and the taste, like it just, all the five senses you were just completely embodied with, just being around in these places. And it's not just like, it wasn't a logical thing, but it was like a true embodied experience of just being here, and just having that sense of freedom as I'm meeting those people. So Andrew was one. There's another one named Tao Juen. She was Lucy's really good friend. She had a German husband, and yeah, they invite us over to their place. And they had a lot of doctor friends who were like surgeons and things like that. So we would go for dinner. So I just got exposed to a lot of these high status people, and they weren't just only based in China. Like they had a house in the UK, they had a house, somewhere in the USA. Like all these people were very internationalized, and that just opened my eyes to like what was possible, and these expats that you would meet, who some of them would be like 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, some in their 80s. And so you just got like all these ages, all these cultures, different points of view. They tell you about their country and like what are the pros and cons of it. The other one will tell you about another country, the pros and cons of it. And then you just kind of go back home that night and realize like how that compares to Canada. And yeah, it was just like the world became a very interesting place, being surrounded by this.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I kind of, it'd be really cool to parse out like what you mean by new era of thinking, and kind of the difference between the mindset that we experience here in Western culture in the United States and Canada. I think we're pretty similar in terms of mindset. Um, but you're talking about how these people were seemed a lot more intelligent, and that they had this new kind of different way of thinking. And I'm curious, like, what you observed about that and what you mean by that.
Yeah, so I would say they just seem more conscious. Like they just seem they were more awake or something. Um, and I don't want to go into like the cultural differences, like, they're more like one is more individualistic and the other one is more group based thinking. Like that's kind of a given, and like that did exist, but I think it was more who they were on an individual level. I don't know if it speaks to all of China versus like all of North America, but it was more so who they were as individuals who were like they had their own business, they spoke multiple languages, they were really smart, they knew a lot about history and technology. They were just I think a really good word to embody is a cosmopolite, which is like someone who's an international citizen of the world. And you're not only just inside of the glass box. Like I met, just a lot of people in Canada, like the people I went to high school with, and nothing against them. That's just like one way of doing it. But it was like that, you're used to going to the same grocery store. You're used to going to pump gas at the same gas station. It's the same group of friends. And so you're just kind of in this small world, and to think like we're we're really these we're we're kind of like these flesh machines, whatever you want to call it, on this rock that's floating through space. And it's like if we're only in our small town, going from point A to B, going to our job, again, nothing wrong with it. It was like there's just so much more potential of being able to see outside of that. When I met these people, I didn't realize that before. I feel like I had like a conceptual thing, like there's something I feel, I don't know what that is. But when I met these people, it's like that's what it is. And it's like, so to explain it more tangibly, because I know it's a little bit intangible right now, is kind of a like, what is this new era of thinking? It's sort of being an international global citizen of the world and having a global awareness and truly being like a truth seeker and being curious about. It's like the blend of uh, the future and like tech and a lot of like there's different elements like air, water, earth, and fire. And the future of tech and everything was a lot of these like white landscapes, like white interiors with like a lot of this air kind of energy of like, it's light, it's bouncy, it's flexible. They would maneuver. There was no heavy energy with them. Like they could literally pick up something and go. They could adapt to change so quickly because they had technology or systems to support them along the way. So anything they wanted to do, it was like very effortless for them because not only were they smart, not only did they seek freedom, not only did they have their own business, not only were they sovereign, like that's another key word here, sovereign, sovereign in their time, sovereign in their business, sovereign in their, where they need to travel, like anywhere at any time. And so by having all these, they had ultimate freedom to do whatever they wanted at any time. And as a result, they were just really happy and cool, effortless people to be around, very unconflicted, didn't really seem to have a lot of problems going on. Versus Canada seemed like at the time it had like a lot of heavy energy to it. There's a lot of bureaucracy, the systems that you have to follow. Um, and if you don't follow the systems, then you don't fit into those systems, then it's going to change and be difficult. And also in China, there's not really any rules. Like, yeah, there is rules, but and maybe that's changed now. But at the time, it was like you can kind of do whatever you want, and nobody's going to say anything. And it gave me this ultimate sense of freedom. And you meet other people who embody that too. Not to say they're doing anything illegal or I wanted to, but it was just they're within the confines of what's possible. And like they would, for example, have one business in one country, they would live in another country, and they would travel in between countries and effectively make their tax go close to zero while still traveling the world. They're just super good at like hacking credit cards, like credit card points, again, all legal, you know, traveling, VIP airline lounges like Singapore Airlines, Emirates. Like they just had such a good sophistication of where to go at the right time, um, that it just showed me like, you can truly be sovereign, but still have it be effortless at the same time.
I think you did like an amazing job fleshing that out because, and at the beginning when you started talking, you were talking about individualism versus kind of this group-based thinking. And then as you kind of went on, you parsed it out even further into like this air-like energy. And for me, like what I kind of interpreted from that is like, I think that the individualistic mindset is so heavy because it's so unopen to new ideas and new ways of thinking. And it's more so focused on like, I'm right versus like, I'm talking to you trying to learn something new. Like, I'm going to challenge my own beliefs. And I think that that comes from a sense of sovereignty, like you were saying, where it's like, okay, I'm a person and my thoughts can be right or they can be wrong. And, when I interact with people, I'm going to recognize that and relate to them in a way where I want to respect them as a person. And that's kind of what I'm doing with the show, too, is like I want to hop on and have genuine conversations where we're parsing out what each of us thinks. Like we're not coming on in with this presupposition that we're right or wrong. Like we're here to explore each other, to learn about each other. And I think by like doing like this life story kind of styled conversation, that it can truly transform the way that we see the world and the way that we see each other and relate to each other.
Totally.
Um, but yeah, that's so interesting that they have that in China because in the US and in Canada, you'd be lucky to find someone who kind of embodies that type of a mindset
Exactly.
and that way of thinking. And it sounds like it was just rampant in China.
Yeah, it was just like busy. It was messy, but there was like beauty in like that messiness, and it was like it truly felt like I was living in an art form or like whatever it was. And it felt like in the same way there's a martial art and you can train for it. There was like this art of like being a master of life through all these different disciplines. It's like you master all the elements, and they would study, they would understand the past, they know what would happen in the future, and just um, yeah, just having all those characteristics that you're a master of, or at least striving towards. Their bodies would be like, six pack ripped. They're going to yoga on an ongoing basis, but they wake up and they'll go to like a very luxurious and like cafe, and everything around them is just perfect. Like they're dressed in these really crisp dress shirts. They have money as a result of that, and their energy reflects that. Like I think everybody carries an energy signature with them, and some of it's heavy, some of it's big, and sometimes you don't even have to say to be around someone who says nothing to bring your mood down or up. And around these people, it was just like I feel naturally drawn to these people. So they almost had this like because they were so self-sufficient on the inside, it was like the cup of water was just overflowing, and that abundance was just drawing people to them. But they weren't trying to like pull people towards them. It was like you just felt attracted to that. So it's a lot of this push energy versus pull energy.
Interesting. And so in China, is that where you had the experience where you were at I think you were at like a nightclub and I think you said you had OD'd on, I don't remember what it was, but it was that in China during the 7 months?
That was actually when I got back from China. So I got back from China. It was 3 months later. I think it was New Year's. I was in Toronto. This old club called Government. It's closed now because I think they shut it down because it was run by the mafia, and it was like it turned into an ecstasy bar after hours. But what was open when I was back? So yeah, maybe it's a bit of transition from like when I was back first couple months. I'm just like so elated. I come back and I just see the world in a different way. And it's just like you see the way people are operating, going to the store, going through the movements, going through everything else. And it's suddenly like they can't see what I just saw. And I feel like I just discovered this. Like I felt like it took the biggest trip of my life. Like, I saw what the Matrix was, and I came back, and then it felt like the Truman Show. Like I saw everybody kind of as like an NPC, going through the motions, doing their thing. But I kind of felt like, well, what's the answer? Do I go back there? Do I try and bring what I learned and share it with people? It just felt like the world was open ahead of me. Like my eyes were so bright, and I brought that energy through, and I knew what like the next 20 years of my life looked like. And it was so exciting. I knew I had to finish up my degree um, still, and I knew like that was the path. Like I was even journaling back then, which was kind of rare for a 21-year-old, I think, at the time. And just like I just knew what the rest of my life was basically going to look like, who my friends were going to be, and everything else. So I was in school, things were going pretty good, and then if you like, I can get into that story when everything happened, stuff I took.
Yeah, I think it'd be because this is like the inception of your health journey,
Yeah.
and so yeah, it'd be really cool to dive in.
Okay. Cool. So then, yeah, it was New Year's at this club. Never really took any drugs, maybe weed and alcohol. Like, took MDMA. We had like a test kit, so like everything seemed pure. There's girls in our group who weigh like 100 pounds. There's probably like 10 of us. And we all took it together. It's basically like these parachutes. So you like, I guess it's like wrapped in paper or whatever. I don't think the dose was crazy high, but it was like a higher normal amount because we wanted to have a good time that night. And so we took it. And in fact, a girl that I met who's from Canada that I saw on my way to China because I made a couple stops in different cities along the way. We had spent some time together, and then while I was in China, I made a stop in Hong Kong because I stopped on some other cities in Asia before I came back to Canada, and I met her in Hong Kong, and we had a great time together. Like we explored the city and everything, and she showed me around. When I flew back to Toronto, or back to Canada, she was kind of like the anchor as my Canadian friend that kind of experienced what I did while I was in China. So she was at the time like a special person to me because it was like, oh, she understands what I went through in this world of NPCs. Like she gets me because she knows, and we would talk all the time. So I came back to Canada. We would talk about it. I met her at that club, government, when I was in, when I, that same night when I took the MDMA. So me and her were dancing. And after I took it, all of a sudden the come up, you get that feeling of the come up. And her friends were around us. And I remember just feeling like so happy. And just this feeling of like, oh my God, I've never felt this elated in my life. Like everything is literally perfect right now. And I thought, like, is this what Nirvana feels like? And there was like a perfect point and we were dancing, but then it just kept increasing and increasing and increasing. And it came to the point where I was on the verge of passing out. Now, Canada, Celsius, I'm not sure what this would be in Fahrenheit. It was like minus 40 that night, which is extremely cold Celsius. So I was in a tank top and they have like a smoker's pit outside. So she could see my eyes and everything as we were dancing that something was not right with me. So she pulled me, pushing away people. We get outside and I'm just like, I'm sweating and my eyes are dilated. I'm getting like big chest pain too. And I'm also shivering at the same time. So I'm sweating and I'm shivering and I'm standing outside, but she's in a dress and she's freezing. So I just told her to go back inside. And so I'm there like stuck shivering and I'm by like, there's like a torch thing outside. I'm just trying to like cool off and stuff's still not happening. And people see me and they come up to me and they're like, they rush up. They're like, bro, are you okay? Like what's happening right now? And one of the head of security, he rushes up to me and he says, you don't look good right now. You need an ambulance. So there's like ambulances stationed outside because I guess this stuff can happen. And they rush me to the ambulance. They take my vitals and stuff's not looking good. And I'm like, it's getting worse. So I go back inside, I tell my friends and they're kind of freaking out because I'm not sure if I want to take the ambulance yet, but I'm still just like, I remember just going back to my friends and there's like these different sections of tables where people have like bottle service. But I remember like going to this one table and I trip over someone's shoe and I fall over the entire table over a whole booth of people. So I like land on four people's laps and they're like, what the hell is going on? And I could hardly get up. And I just remember kind of like being at peace, but it was like I was getting this chest pain. It seems like so much was happening at once. All of a sudden, my other friends are tripping and they run up to me. And sometimes when you take MDMA, your jaw will like clench because that's why you need like magnesium. So I see like four of my friends rushing up to me. And the sight was like, they all look like cavemen or like, I don't know if you remember the game Crash Bandicoot, but there was like that tribal figure whose jaw was like hanging down. And all my friends were like clenching their jaws. They were coming up to me and their eyes were dilated. And it was just, you had like these four people around you, just like going like this, trying to make sure you're okay. And they're freaking out too, but they're experiencing a lot of bliss at the same time. They're like, dude, you gotta, they were just trying to get by. So they were like, dude, you have to go to the ambulance. So I go back to the head of security, go in the ambulance now, and that's where the vitals, like, they see that it's getting worse and worse. So they rush me to the hospital, and I kind of feel like I'm losing consciousness. And now, and I don't know what's going on. My body feels extremely hot. I remember like the paramedics whispering or like saying stuff around me, like some stuff's happening. Anyway, go into the emergency room, and they pumped me with like a lot of electrolytes. They cooled me down with a bunch of cold cloths, and I forget like all the medication they injected me with. But I was there for a good period of time. And the doctor said after they did all the scans or like whatever they did that I had serotonin syndrome, which is like where you have too much serotonin in your body overheats. And he said I almost died that night. And he said I came very close. He said I was very lucky. And yeah, he said I dodged the bullet. And anyway, he told me what to do. They let me go from the hospital when the vitals were better. Then I returned to my friends the next day, and of course I felt like shit. Like I was after the come down. When you take MDMA, your dopamine receptors are like fried and everything. And I think I really overdid it. And everybody's body reacts differently. And I was confused because girls who are 100 pounds like took the same thing I did, and they didn't have any negative reaction or negative response. So like, what happened in my case? So that was really confusing for me. And I'm like, how can my body not respond to that? To, like respond well to that where other people can't. So at that point, I noticed something was like off, and my body just felt super inflamed. But yeah, I was still kind of like in the adrenaline rush of like the whole experience and everything that happened. So you're kind of just like pushing your way through it. And then I came back home after that trip, and even a couple nights, a couple sleeps later, as my body's still recovering, stuff's not improving. And in fact, it like feels kind of noticeably worse. And I remember for the like the hotel and everything, one of the parents of one of my friends that I went with, I had to go drop off money. And so I went over to the house, I dropped off money, and I was trying to have a conversation with her, and I couldn't even talk properly. I'm like, I can't even think of the right word to say. My speech is impaired. I'm slow, I'm foggy, and I'm like, what the hell is wrong with me? And I started getting this feeling of like disconnection or like dissociation a little bit. But at the same time, like my body just felt super inflamed. Um, anyway, I was like super awkward in that conversation. I'll never forget that. And then after just interacting with the world, like, with friends or going to the grocery store, massive anxiety, just like out of nowhere. It was just a 90-day difference. I felt like complete 180 to what I was when I was in China before. So basically, like, just didn't know what was happening with me. And went to the doctor. The doctor didn't know what was going on. And then I started getting symptoms of, like, I was just starting to lose weight. I was just getting really inflamed. Certain foods I could eat before were just like giving me massive brain fog. My stomach was upset. Um, and stuff was just just headed downhill. Like nothing was the same that it was before. um I was losing muscle mass in my face. You could just tell like my eyes started looking like hollow. My energy was decreasing. I was like a shell of my former self. And the really weird part about it is my brain felt so shocked, just like so shook by the whole experience, that I always felt tired no matter how much sleep I got. It was just my brain was always racing and it couldn't shut off. And then I remember just going back to school that semester and taking like some quizzes, courses. My grades just like plummeted, and I had to get like extra time on my exams now, finish. And then as time was going on, I had to repeat courses, and just because like for me to read like a one 5 sentences took me like 3 minutes, and I couldn't comprehend it. Like my brain was slow. Like it's just weird. Like when you get drunk, or like if somebody was to take a drug like a hallucinogen, you would come back. Imagine doing that, but you don't actually come back, and you just stay dormant in that state. Like it's kind of scary. And so I'm like researching on forum boards, like what's going on. And this is like a long time ago, so science wasn't really around there. And turns out I was looking at the forum board, and I saw like depersonalization, derealization, and I was like, this is it. Like this is what I'm going through. Like I thought I was actually going crazy. And because it was like this disconnection. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what like the outside world was. Um, it was yeah, it was strange. I felt like I could be walking down the road with like a best friend of mine or like a girlfriend, and like it's morbid, but let's say someone came to stab her, I just would not have like any emotional reaction. Stuff like that just would like I didn't have an urgency. I could spend money, the rest of my savings and I wouldn't even feel anything. So it kind of felt like this dangerous place. Like I could even commit like some crazy crime right now, or like I could go punch somebody in the face randomly on the street, and that wouldn't feel wrong to me. But I knew it would feel wrong to me before. So it was very strange. So I kind of felt dangerous to myself. And I didn't know what this was. Like, am I going psychotic now? Or like, what exactly is happening? I realized after the fact it was really just the brain's way of coping with mass anxiety. So getting rebodied in the brain and body again. But then shortly after that, started getting blood in my stool, and stomach was just off, and energy was going down. So went to like, well, probably over a dozen doctors, and finally they did a colonoscopy on me, and the diagnosis was Crohn's. So I had Crohn's disease too on top of that. So I really, between that, and I was working like a sales job at the time, and I was working kind of like in finance too, but I was forced to quit my job, and I was basically just like in my bed, could hardly move, and stuff just kind of kept getting worse. And like friendships and everything like that, I just had to like isolate myself from people because I didn't want them to see me in whatever this state was. So that went on for like, I was kind of in this cycle of like taking courses, going to the library, reading about my thing for like hours upon hours a day, like what's happening with me, being obsessed with it. Medications that doctors gave me wasn't doing anything. I remember taking antidepressants for like 1 month, and an SSRI, I think it was like Lexapro, and it made me worse. Like I felt so like, yeah, it remove the lows, but I just remember having so much brain fog I could hardly sleep. Like it just did not agree with me. And I remember the doctor saying, "Stay on it for the next few weeks," but it just didn't work. Medication for Crohn's even worse too. So basically,
Real
at that
quick,
point, hit rock bottom. Go ahead.
what is Crohn's?
So it's a autoimmune. So it's an autoimmune disease, which is of the gut. So it's in a category, for example, like ulcerative colitis, Crohn's. Other autoimmune diseases could be like rheumatoid arthritis, could be shingles. There's different ones, but it's usually you have a gene for a certain disease, and sometimes it's dormant. But through periods of intense stress, it can turn on. And what Crohn's is specifically is like inflammation of your gastrointestinal system. So like a lot of your small, your large intestine up there. Ulcerative colitis is more the same thing, but more towards like the rectum area, like more towards the end. Crohn's is more like up above. It's called like terminus ileum, like that whole area and everything. And yeah, so it's an autoimmune disease. Doctors even now don't really have a cure for it, at least through one pill. And yeah, so taking all these medications didn't help me at all in any way. I basically hit rock bottom. I didn't know where to turn. Felt like a pretty dark place at the time. Um, it's like, well, what do I do? So I just kind of kept moving forward, one foot in front of the other, retaking courses, went into a bunch of debt. A lot of my friends were graduating school and college, and I just felt like totally left behind. And so I went from like China being on top of the world, coming back, all this crazy stuff happening, and then all of a sudden, boom, and it hits you, and like it feels like you had $1 billion, and it all just you lose all of it. And you're 21, 22 at the time, so you still kind of have an ego, and like everyone around that age is like building their bodies up. Who's got the better job? Who's moving out of the parents' house first? Just like all these different things. Who's got the better car? And I was heading in the completely opposite direction, and I felt like I was back to my 13-year-old self or something. And it was crazy because you couldn't like. I had to ask my friends to do presentations for me, like in group-based presentations, because I just couldn't like present in front of the classroom because I'd be too nervous. I couldn't like think of my words properly. Couldn't go out and socialize like everyone's going out and doing their own things. So I didn't know who I was anymore. Just the identity piece and everything. So it was total mass confusion. So I had to. It lasted probably like 3 years of being stuck in this cycle. I spent so much money on supplements, and this is when I started researching like 8 hours a day. Like, how does our body work? How does health work? And how does everything else work? Spent a lot of money on like supplements. A lot of the student loans that I got that I had to use towards my courses, I was just putting towards my health because I knew that this was the priority right now. and I just had to heal myself and get better. So yeah, I was just spending it on private doctors. Yeah.
What were some of the things that you were doing early on? Because like you start buying all these supplements and you start doing all this research, and like when you get into the health space, there's so many different things to start learning and researching. And specifically when you're like trying to improve your health, you run into like all these different vitamins and minerals that you can take and the symptoms that they help or the benefits that they have. And so, like, what were some of the things that you were doing early on that you thought were helping? Um, and like, how much of it do you think you were doing that was like not really helping at all?
Yeah. So the first thing I dove into was supplements. One, it was sexy. Two, I saw the movie Limitless like, I don't know, a year or two prior, and I just wanted like, what's that one pill that's gonna fix me? I was also upset that I potentially have brain damage. So I was trying to figure out, is there like a nootropic? Nootropic is like a high performance kind of supplements you can take to try and increase brain performance, and learning about neuroplasticity and like how do I regrow my brain neurons. So it was just like all these different things. And I was trying everything. Like I probably had over 75 supplement bottles at one point, just collecting. Like the supplement people at the store knew me so well. Hey, it's Riley again. Come and get some more supplements. Sorry, you have all of our stock. There's nothing more new we can give you. It was just like I was doing everything, man, and trying to figure out what exactly worked. It was definitely helping, but it wasn't getting to like the root cause, what it actually was. I was convinced it was like a micronutrient deficiency that I had, or there was some brain damage. Like, how do I heal my brain damage? And that was the crux of it. But I realized everything I was doing wasn't working right away with the supplement piece. Same with the diet. Like, I was kind of following like keto diet, then I was following like uh, different forms of diet. I didn't know about carnivore yet because it wasn't really a thing. And I would go to the exercise, but I'd like push super heavy weights, but be so exhausted after. But like literally when I woke up, I had to lie in bed for like 3 hours. Like I just could not move. It was just like zero energy. Everything took so much effort. It was tough. It was really tough. So it was watching a lot of YouTube videos online and just figuring out what was potentially happening. I'm doing this like 8 hours a day. Like I'm obsessed. I'm not really watching any TV or anything else. This is all I'm doing 24/7. So I became very knowledgeable in the process of what might be happening in the body, but I needed to go deeper. And one of the videos I watched was about like lab testing, specifically functional lab testing, to see like what the root cause of something is or where those issues are. And I realized I've been guessing this entire time with different supplements or what might work for me. Let's figure out now like what exactly is wrong with my body. And so there was this doctor in the USA who did a lot of these videos who I wanted to work with, and he was expensive. But I really liked what he talked about the root cause, and it really clicked with me. And it was a very good scientific approach. And it was expensive because he's in the USA and I'm in Canada. The US dollar was 40% more. But I was willing to go into more debt and go all in and just fix this. Like I really didn't care at this point. It was truly my obsession to just get better. So reached out to him, first consult. He shared everything with me, what we need to do. And it just felt so nice. Like finally someone who can understand me with like a path I can get better. And you have people in Canada who say you're like kind of crazy, nothing's wrong with you. Because everything kind of looked okay from the outside. But like inside it was a totally different story. So and then you say to yourself, well, am I going crazy? Like, am I fine? But like you don't feel fine. So very strange place to be, stuck in limbo, floating through the abyss. So this doctor really understood me, and he said, what we're going to do is we're going to do a bunch of lab testing on you to get to the root cause. Costs thousands of dollars. And I'm like, sure, willing to do it. So we do the assessment, we do lab testing. Came back, my adrenals, I was in like super late stage 4 adrenal fatigue, which is like, you're basically flatline where you have no cortisol left, and this can lead to something known as Addison's disease. Like people with PTSD who are in the army, you eventually can have so much stress that you need cortisol injections, almost like a diabetic would need insulin injections, just because your body's been so stressed out and your adrenal glands have been pumping so much cortisol that it's like whipping a tired horse. It just can't go anymore. I had a lot of gut parasites. There was heavy metal like mercury in my body. There was some mold in my body. Micronutrients were off. Thyroid was off. There was Hashimoto's. body was just like an absolute mess. And it was at this point like, wow, all this stuff that the regular doctors couldn't tell me, pills that they were giving me couldn't fix me. Now I find like all this stuff of what we have to do. So we started number one focusing on my diet, and that diet was the paleo autoimmune template. And within 4 weeks, symptoms drastically improved. Then we started working on eliminating the parasites, and that was like a 60-day protocol. And then it was kind of like month after month we were improving. And this was probably like a year-long process. I don't have really much else to say. The rest of my life was boring, besides the fact of just working on these things day in and day out, and just like I was taking bioidentical hormones for my adrenal glands, pregnenolone, DHEA, licorice extract glycerin, adrenal glandulars, adaptogenic herbs to just like heal my body. And I noticed a big difference from this. He told me like what foods to eat at the right time of the day that agreed with my body and genetics. I started removing foods that I was inflamed with. So gluten was out, dairy was out, grains were out, nitrates were out, FODMAPs were out for like 3 months. But like the gains that I got from that were so huge. And suddenly like stuff started coming back up online. The anxiety was starting to decrease. And I realized it wasn't like necessarily the MDMA I took. Yeah, that was probably a big piece, but it was all these underlying things that were happening to me. And maybe in fact, my body was already broken. It was just the MDMA just put it over the edge and like really put it down. Because up until then too, like I was go, go, go. And I probably had the parasites before. I probably had the heavy metals before. Probably had like all this other stuff before. And that MDMA is just what sent everything over the edge. I probably had a dormant gene for Crohn's, and through that, very intense stress, that's what activated the Crohn's. It was so much stress for my body to handle and my brain to handle that it went into survival mode. And so that's where it created this disconnection, because it was trying to like protect itself from the outside. And it was like a survival response to make my brain feel safe. So in order to do that, it can kind of just make everything numb. Like our brains are very, very smart. And that's just like a survival response. So it wasn't me going crazy. It was just me needing to make my brain feel safe again, to do all that. So so I learned like the diets to take, the supplements to take, exercise to do, and my body started coming back up online. And I was extremely patient. Like he said, if you have 5 to 10% improvements every month, that's fine. And I was okay with that. Some days would go up, some days would go down. I'm detoxing, I'm getting detox reactions. But I didn't care. Like I was fully just dedicated to this. Still with the sight of like being in China and knowing what my potential was. I was just trying to get back to that. Like that was always my North Star, and just continue that journey of what I was on, you know, before of being in there. So while I was doing that, I was doing a lot of somatic experiencing work, which is like a lot of releasing trauma from like the body. And if anyone wants to know, there's like, issues in the tissues, the body keeps a score, traumatic release exercises. Really started exploring this, and that's what started making my mind and body feel safe. I was also doing like EMDR, which is rapid eye movement resensitization, where you use your eyes in a specific way to help release trauma and make your brain feel safe. I was doing something called brain spotting, super helpful. I was doing EFT, which is like tapping on meridian points to make the body feel safe. So it was like all these things. So I was working with both doctors and therapists, and very expensive, but it's like I was improving. I saw the light at the end of the tunnel. All of a sudden, fast forward, period of time, I forget exactly how long it was, but Crohn's symptoms started to disappear. My brain was coming back up online. My energy was coming back up online. Things were like starting to improve really quickly. All those like depersonalization, derealization symptoms were starting to disappear. I was just like getting my life back. Time went on and on and on. Not only did I get back to where I was before, like I shot way past that point to what I thought was possible before. Like I was in such a surplus now, and I'm like, wow, I'm back up online. So once my body hit that point, I had to take a break from taking courses because I just wasn't in the place. I went back to those same courses, the same things that I failed at, completely aced everything, like nailed them. Everything was back up online again. And I knew that I had like my true self back. Went back to doctors. They said I didn't really have any of the symptoms of the Crohn's anymore. And they're like, whatever you're doing, kid, just keep doing that thing. There's no medication that we can give you that might be able to potentially help you. And it was amazing. And I realized like through that experience, I didn't know it at the time, but it was like my own personal sovereignty. Like I took health into my own hands, figured out a way, solved it myself. That was completely opposite to what the system and like all kinds of systems in the Western world told us to do. And that's where I became obsessed with like, okay, I couldn't rely on these people. I'm gonna make my own systems now with the anchor of like what everything was like in China and like what that true potential was, being over there too. So pretty long winded, but yeah, that's it.
No, it's an amazing story, man. It truly is. And the reason I say that, I'm not just like trying to butter you up or anything, but like you were diagnosed with a disease called Crohn's disease, and I'm guessing in the traditional Western literature that this disease is uncurable. You're not going to be able to do anything else to be able to rid yourself of this disease. And so, like, another follow up question I have for you is like, what was it about you that wasn't willing to just accept that face on and listen to the doctor saying, you're not going to be able to cure this. Like, you're just going to have to take the medicine and hope that it kind of goes away. Or like the people that are surrounding you saying, like, dude, like these symptoms that you're experiencing, they're completely normal. Like, this is just what it's like to be human. Like, what was it about you that you was just like, no, like, I'm not going to accept that. I'm going to strive for something better.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it was like I knew where like the paradise was. I knew what which was like being in China, like it was so cemented into my being and my new identity that I was just chasing that thing, like no matter what it took. Because I knew what the potential was. Like I said, it was like seeing the Matrix. And then now it was like my battle against the Matrix of the mainstream of like, okay, you think you know what the Matrix looks like behind the scenes? Well, we're gonna test you now. It's you versus the Matrix. And it's like going through this entire system and just having that anchor of like wanting to get back to that place and knowing what my true potential was. Because it's one thing when you realize like, you might feel like, okay, this is the ceiling of my potential and this is as far as I can go. And I'm okay with that. I'm comfortable with it. I'm just going to do this thing. But for me, it felt like my ceiling was so much higher, but I was just, operating at this capacity. So once I knew that about myself, and because I'd done it before, I can do it again, but I just can't do it right now because of my physical limitations. I'll do whatever it takes to get back there. And I didn't care how long it took. Like no matter how fast my friends were like what they're accomplishing in life or like what my parents were saying of like I should be doing this by this age or what the system was telling me. It was just no matter what it took, I really wanted to get to that point. Also, too, prior to that, there was like a lot of movie characters, that young age or like video game characters that I really aspired to be of like being a hero. And I felt like through this journey when I was on the down, it felt like, man, if I can make it through this thing right now, plus what I had gone through in China, like the high highs and the low lows, like there is nothing stopping me after this. Like there's literally nothing that can beat this pain that I was going through that can, you know, there's no worse hell than I was going through that anything in comparison to this would be so easy to make it through. So I almost saw it as like a blessing in disguise, especially in the later stages, going through that. Like before, I was just pure victim mentality. Like, oh my God, this is a shock to the system. What's happening? And it kills the ego too in the process because you're like, you saw yourself as one way, but then it's like, nope. So it shatters the ego. And yeah, with the DPDR, you kind of lose your ego in the process and you don't even know who you are anymore, which is, I guess, one of the steps of the past to enlightenment, which I don't think it maybe necessarily is, but it definitely taught me that maybe this was for me because coming back from China, I had this high ego and everything else where I was going that it just completely shattered all that. So, uh, but yeah, it was just knowing the high highs, knowing the low lows, people I aspired up to, and knowing what my potential was and what my ceiling was and what my future had. That I was doing anything like I was gonna. It's like once you see something, you can't unsee it anymore. And I saw it already. And going back or doing anything else would give me so much pain to just like stick in a 9 to 5 job I wouldn't want to be in or, follow the traditional path, what people told me. And I think there was like a lot of anger, a lot of rage and knowing what the potential was. And a lot of excitement for what the future held, that there's no way that I would do it any other way. No matter how long it took, I'd keep chipping away and eventually get to it.
You never gave up.
Yeah, kept going.
And basically, you went through, like, I don't think you had a lot of emphasis on this, but you basically went through like a near death experience.
Yeah, totally.
Do you think that that had, uh, like, did you think about that a lot? Did that really like settle in, after that happened?
You know what? It never really did. Um, I just always thought I'd think like I was lucky, but I never thought like, oh wow, I had a near death experience. Like, um, what do I make from that? And even until this day, I still don't always acknowledge or reflect on that fact. But I think that's a true thing. And this is just another example where you make me realize things that I didn't think of before. But yeah, I didn't really think too much of the near death experience, but I definitely thought of myself as lucky. I was just so focused on moving forward towards what that potential was that I tried to block out things that just weren't going to serve me in that sense. So as time went on, I had more gratitude of what I had, of that experience that I had, of like, maybe it is time to slow down a little bit. But yeah, at the time I didn't think too much. It was more just trying to blind out everything that was potentially negative or might, I was thinking at the time, was going to slow me down and just focus on what I wanted, not what I didn't want.
It sounded like maybe you weren't like self-aware, like thinking about it a lot, but it sounded like your biology kind of knew that you
Yeah,
almost had died. And
yeah,
it went in, and like you said, like with your Crohn's, like it wasn't there before, it wasn't that crazy, but you had all these underlying things that like this experience kind of served as like a catalyst to kind of spring forward the Crohn's disease.
yeah.
And but your body was in this like state of constant stress, like it just felt like it was unsafe to some degree.
Firefly.
And yeah, fight or flight. And so it sounds like maybe your body knew.
I think so. I think my body knew, but the mind didn't necessarily know, or it didn't want to acknowledge that and it wanted to know. It was almost just running an overdrive of trying to ignore everything. But like if I truly sat down and let everything come to the surface, like, I think that not the acknowledgement would be there. But I think I had a lot, I think the body was trying to tell me, but I tried to distract myself of just like push forward. Remember what it was like before, push forward instead of what it was like just being with what is. And what that was is really shitty and really negative of that near death experience. But I think it was necessary you know, to go through the time. But I think the faster had I acknowledged it, maybe the faster I would have healed. Maybe I was just like trying to pump down supplements and trying to do all these external things without acknowledging what was happening on the inside. And because it was really uncomfortable, like to admit like, oh my God, I almost died, or like these uncomfortable sensations in the body of not trying to like process them or be with them. It's not always easy. So I think I kept just kind of pushing forward and going with it. It was only like later on that I finally addressed those things. And that's where there was like another phase of recovery too. But yeah, at the time it was just trying to like, what supplement can I take to just make me feel better now? But I realized through the body feeling safe, through the mind feeling safe, only then does the derealization, depersonalization truly kind of go away. Because your mind will disconnect. If you're very stressed out, your mind will disconnect so it doesn't have to feel that tension or that trauma. But if you process it, the brain's always going to feel safe. Like the unconscious mind's always listening, and if it doesn't feel safe, then you won't feel safe either.
Yeah. And like I think your response to it was totally reasonable because, afterwards you were kind of in this never-ending kind of hangover as you kind of described it. And so you weren't really in a place where your performance was at a peak. Obviously, it was probably the lowest it's ever been. And so if you tried to process something so complex like that at that time, like how do you think it would have went?
Totally, yeah. It's something so complex at the time. I think it's like a hose. There's only so much that you can fit through at the time, and any more, it just would have. made me feel worse or like become re-traumatized or just, definitely a lot worse in the process. It had to be a little bit at the time, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit at the time. But I think it's like a kettle that just builds up so much steam and so much pressure, it just eventually pops. And that's kind of what happened to me.
It's almost like you're familiar with the RAS, the reticular activation system,
Yeah.
and just kind of like, the world that we see, like our body is like so hyper advanced in some ways, where it's like it almost knows stuff that we don't know. And like just kind of with the experience that you went through, it's a pretty good example of that because the body knew that it probably wasn't capable of processing that at the time. And so it directed your focus, like when that EMT like said that to you and was like, dude, you're like lucky to be alive. Like your brain probably just kind of tucked that away into a compartment because it knew like it was not ready to deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah. It felt like, in a way, I kind of felt invincible. It's like, well, of course, this is the story of Riley now. Like, he almost nearly died after coming from China. I'm like, this is just an add on to the story. And so you just don't acknowledge it and you just see it as like, okay, painting the story, painting the story, painting the story. Like, how could it be any other way? Like, he's in China doing these crazy adventures, coming back here. Like, of course, that's what's going to happen next. But, it's kind of a bit in fantasy land of like, pushing, especially at that age. But I think you're right. Like, I don't think there could have been another way at that time because that's all I could perceive.
And you had to figure out like how am I gonna
Yeah,
like figure this out?
totally.
You needed like every ounce of energy to push yourself forward, to stay alive, to keep going, and not only that, you're having like these intrusive thoughts
Yeah,
of like these morbid thoughts of like because you feel unsafe, so your body's kind of like projecting these thoughts of like I'm unsafe, like
yeah,
what would happen if this girl you were talking about walking with that girl and you're like what if she got like attacked, like I wouldn't be able to defend her or help her, and like
sure.
not only that I'm not even in a place where I can even feel like a response to that, and it's
Yeah,
just this crazy type of a mindset where you feel so disconnected from everything.
totally is. Yeah. And you feel pretty helpless. Like, I thought I had high grip, but there's only so much you can take. But when you have day in, day out, you're kind of in this delirious state. You know, let's say 1 year passes, 2 year passes, 3 year passes, like, it's going to take a toll on anyone.
Yeah, I mean, and the fact that you push through that is it's impressive, man, because you could have easily gotten caught and stuck in that state,
Yeah, totally.
you
And
know.
yeah, I think there's probably some luck involved too, but yeah, finding the right people at the right time, never stopping. And I feel like I could have only carried on so long for myself. Like if I didn't find the help, I probably maybe there's a part of me that would have just given up. I don't know. I feel like it probably would have kept pushing forward, but finding the right people too at the right time and giving you that hope or telling you what it is, um, it's one of the best things. So that's where it kind of just opened. Like I'm like, wow, I can hire a coach in this area now, and he can start helping me with this thing. Something I didn't realize, and I just realized that's the ultimate shortcut. Starting with health to learning about the body to like any new thing too. So it kind of became a thing of sovereignty of, okay, I'm going to hire this person for this specific thing. I'll learn it quickly, and then I can start building these skills and um, becoming those types of people that I was meeting in China for the first time.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into that. Let's take a little break. Let's take a 5 minute.
Sure.
All right, so we're back. So how long did that process take to where like your symptoms of Crohn started to disappear and you started kind of feeling like a little bit more at like your baseline performance?
It was probably about a year, I would say. It probably could have been quicker, to be honest, but there's a lot of trial and error in the process. But it was probably about roughly a year.
You figured it out in a year?
Yeah, that wasn't like 100%. I would still have dips, going down. Like after that, it was still improvements that were happening because there's kind of like feeling horrible, like let's say 1 out of 10, And then you feel 6, 10 out of 10. You're feeling pretty okay. Then there's like 10 out of 10 where you're like feeling superhuman. So like to get to that 6 or 7 out of 10, where I felt like pretty decent and normal, but I was at least functional at that point. That was probably about a year.
But dude, being from like 0 to 10 to 6 out of 10 is like worlds different.
Yeah. Oh, worlds different. Like even going from a 1 to a 2 to a 3, like you can feel so much better.
Yeah. So, wow, that's crazy. And do you think that was shortcutted because you like reached out to professionals and other experts and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. One part was like my own grit and pushing through and everything, but the other part is like working smart. So instead of like this machine gun auto fire, like trying to do everything, it was more of this new sniper like approach with 100% precision. It's like, this is what's happening. You do this in this way, in this order, and you'll start to feel better. And that's exactly what I did. And I went to just like the best of the best, no matter how much money it took. And it worked. And that's how I was just able to improve so quickly.
So what was the difference between like the diagnosis from like the traditional doctors versus like these coaches, these new, types of health experts that you were talking with?
Yeah, so they were doctors, but just in functional medicine. The other doctors are like conventional doctors. So one's a pill model, let's manage the symptoms. The other one was let's get to the root cause where this is coming from. So with the stomach inflammation, the conventional model would be take this pill, let's order the inflammation, let's give you steroids. The root cause was, oh, you have gut parasites that are destroying your gut lining, giving you leaky gut. Oh, you have a lot of candida, yeast overgrowth, worms, viruses, mold that's causing the whole body to be inflamed. So it's like removing those weeds from my body. And once they were gone, then the body's natural healing capability just came in. And then, they added, you know, the seeds to start, once we removed the weeds to start everything growing and just feeling a lot better. But yeah, that's where like that acceleration happened really quickly.
And then like how did they identify the root causes like versus, getting a diagnosis from a traditional doctor and they're just like, okay, we're just going to label your symptom and, you have Crohn's and basically what that means is you have the symptoms that you're experiencing, right? So they kind of label the symptom as a as the problem, and they call it Crohn's. Versus like the approach that you're now learning, which is, let's identify the root causes. So like, how do they go about finding those root causes?
Yeah, so traditional they do a colonoscopy. So they just like they put a tube up your bum and they with a camera on it and they just look for inflammation of the actual gut lining tissue. And they sometimes in different cases like it's bleeding. In severe cases, they have to do operation and like actually cut a piece of that off because it's just too inflamed. And then they can also do an MRI scan too. And then once they have that, okay, well, you have inflammation. Well, we need to reduce the symptoms of that inflammation and give you medication to reduce that inflammation that's there. But there's tons of side effects that come with that too. The other approach was let's do a stool test, let's do a hormonal test, let's do an organics test, let's do all these other tests to identify, like I said, parasites, everything else. Basically, like all these indicators that are hidden stressors in your stress bucket that are making your body act the way that it is. And so when you remove those hidden stressors, then the body, it's like a computer with a bunch of viruses on it or a bunch of programs running. Remove those, now the computer's running faster, and now you have more bandwidth in your RAM and your CPU speed to do what it's actually supposed to do. And our bodies are the same way. So once you remove what's getting in its own way, body turns back up online, but then you can add things into, go from 7 to go to 10. But if you just remove what's in its own way, our bodies have beautiful healing capabilities by itself. It's just there's stuff that's usually in the way that's preventing that from happening. And that's exactly what happened to me. Like I had over 30 hidden stressors in my body that were slowing me down. And so once I removed those, it's like all this weight that was once on you, it was lifted. And before I saw black and white, but now I'm starting to see color again, and like things are looking brighter. Stuff's opening up again. It was great. It was an amazing experience to go through.
And so like some of the stuff that was in the way of the body being able to heal itself was like the parasites, the heavy
Yeah,
metals.
mold, mold, micronutrient deficiencies, thyroid was super slow, brain neurotransmitters were off. There's obviously some underlying trauma there, just like that experience in itself. That had a massive impact on the body, and just releasing that, helped the healing process. Um, like mitochondria was down, inflammation was high. I was eating foods I was constantly inflamed to, even healthy foods. Like I was eating things, for example, like quinoa, brown rice, and these other ones. But every time I consumed those foods for my body specifically, it was starting these internal fires, and it led to like leaky gut. So food particles would enter my bloodstream, trigger my immune response, make my adrenals go into overdrive. It just like it put everything in massive chaos.
This is kind of like a side question, but like, what do you think? Because there's people who can eat these foods, like quinoa. Like, who would ever think that eating quinoa would cause inflammation in your body
Yeah.
or have like a negative health effect? And it's like it seems like it's more of a recent thing. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just something that went undiagnosed and unnoticed for a really long time. But like it seems like it's a newer thing where people are having adverse side effects to eating even like these healthy foods. Where there's like a group of people who can eat like sugary foods and really foods that you would identify as like junk food and not have any negative side effects from it. Like, what do you think is going on here?
Yeah, so people's bodies, they are quote unquote unhealthy foods, but everybody has different genetics. Everybody has a different blueprint. And some people, when they eat these foods, that can cause inflammation, even healthy foods. Now, it's across the board for anybody. It's better not to have gluten, dairy, cheeseburgers, French fries, seed oils, and everything. But once you remove all that out of the way, a lot of people still have these negative symptoms. I was one of them. So I had to remove these deeper layers of foods that was triggering that inflammation for me. And there's different food groups. Like once you get past the gluten, dairy, you have like nightshades, you have FODMAPs, you have grains, you have like there's all these different types of foods that you can be sensitive to. And there's a systematic way where you have to address it for the individual. Um, but yeah, it sounds complex, but it can be simple if you take the right approach.
Yeah. I love how you went like straight to blueprint, like what's your specific machinery?
Yeah.
Because I think that's what gets lost in translation. Because it's like people just kind of compare their bodies to everyone else's bodies, and they're like, why can't I eat these foods when this group of people eats them and they're completely fine?
Totally.
Um, but yeah, you're saying to basically look at what's your machinery like what can your digestive system handle, and like where are your biomarkers at, things like
Yeah,
that.
totally.
So you go through this whole experience of trying to combat your Crohn's disease, and then you come out the other end. Like, what does that look like? Like, how does your mindset change about the traditional healthcare system? Like, do you kind of have like a vendetta against the traditional healthcare system where you're like,
Yeah, it's a good question. In the early stages, I really did. I'm like, these assholes, like how I was just so angry because like the doctors were great. It's just what they were giving me where it was actually making me feel worse. So it almost felt like this feeling of like putting poison in your body. Because like you take this thing and you feel worse. Like I remember taking with the Crohn's, taking a steroid called budesonide, and it's supposed to reduce inflammation, but my adrenals were so shot, and I didn't know this at the time, that when I took it, I literally thought I had to go to the hospital from taking one pill of this stuff because like I was in bed all day, my heart was racing, I had a pounding headache, I felt very like panicky, and
hmm.
it
So
just
these are
did
like the
not
side
agree
effects you were having?
exactly
Gotcha.
from them, and it just wasn't helping with the symptoms itself. Like I said, it made me feel worse. Same with like at the time for like 4 weeks, I'd taken the antidepressant and just felt worse too. So it was like, who are these guys giving me this stuff that's making me feel worse? And so in those stages, I felt like I had a vendetta against them. And it was just like, also my mind wasn't the most healthy that it could be. But as time went on, I realized like, these guys are trying to save lives. They're trying to do the best that they can do. It's just the model that's operating through. isn't the best. Like, I think the stat is on average, doctors receive 2 hours of sleep training in all of medical school. And like that was a big part to my healing too, is also getting sleep on point. So when you just realize these things, it's just the modality that they're learning. It's just, it's not the best. So it's not them personally, it's just the model. So if they learn a better model, then it would probably give people better results. So, you realize after it's not so much of the vendetta. This was a blessing in disguise, but let's help people who are stuck in the same trap as me and, you know, help them out of it in the most natural way possible.
Yeah, I think that's a really healthy perspective. But like, what did you do after, like, now you're finally kind of back to normal, and you've been just going through this crazy journey of obsessing over health, learning about new health topics, trying to find a resolution to your problem. Like, what do you do after you go from 0 out of 10 to now 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, feeling a lot
Yeah.
better?
Yeah. So before I was like, my degree was originally in finance. So finishing up the degree and then going into uh, kind of like sales jobs on the side, finance jobs and stuff like that. I thought like that was my future and everything. But then all of a sudden this thing happened to me. And I always like thought health was important, like go to the gym, do a steam sauna, take the right supplements, eat the right diet. But I never thought I would go this far into all this. And it literally like became who I was. Like I was obsessed with it for so long. And I wanted to go into finance because I wanted to be rich. Like those are the reasons. Like go where the money is. My dad was in business,
Richie
and I met
Rich.
Richie Rich. That's right. So just follow those footsteps. And I kind of realized just going through the whole health thing of like, this stuff is so interesting, like how the body works in a root cause level. What if I could take the same like financial KPIs and all the algorithms, but like apply it to the body? And I felt like I learned so much about the body, like really deeply. I joke sometimes, like it felt like I indirectly earned a PhD just going through all of it. But yeah, my passion was now more on the health side of things, and I had less and less passion on the finance side and just doing balance sheets, reports. I just didn't get as much meaning in it anymore, and I realized like I could actually help people change their lives as I've started to change mine. Like, you go from 0 to 10 to 6 or 7 out of 10. Doctors don't really know how you do it. I'm like, you kind of have something here. Now I kind of felt like I had my own superpower to help other people. So another big thing for me was sleep and improving my sleep along my journey. And I realized that this was a business opportunity. So I started at
But
first.
before we
Yeah,
go
go
into
ahead.
the sleep consultant, where were you, like, what was your first finance, what was your finance job after college?
I was working in, so I was in China. I was working a finance job there. I
You were
was
in
back in
China
Canada.
again?
No, this was before when I was in China. So I went to China 2 times.
Okay.
The first time, um, the first time is when the whole health crisis started. That's when I was studying there. But 2 years later, I did actually mention this fact, and this is important, is 2 years later, I wanted to go back to that feeling of what was it like being in China? Because maybe that was like the crux of all of this of like, old Riley has to go back to China, find himself again, and that would be the cure to all of this. And so there was a opportunity to work in investment banking and private equity in China, right in
Oh,
Shanghai
wow.
in the bond. So I went over there to work and my performance was shot. Like it was weird being back there. Some of my old friends had like moved to other countries and stuff, and it felt weird because I had all these old memories in China. And being back there, one part of me like had all those old memories, but the other part of me was like, I'm experiencing China as like sick Riley now, like through this lens. And I have a picture. It's in the course you may have saw it, but I'm like in a dress shirt and I think I was 23 at the time, and I just looked like completely out of it. Like I was so stressed, my eyes were gone. I looked like a World War II um, person that just came back from war. Like I was just like totally, totally shot. So yeah, working that job was fine, but I had to regularly, like pretty much every second day, get acupuncture done on me. Like there's a lot of Chinese hospitals, and acupuncture is like a Chinese thing. Go for like daily massages. Like I was doing everything to just stay above water while I was there. So I was there for how long was it? 4 to 6 months? Yeah, it was something like that. So like I was working that finance job after I graduated, and then came back to Canada, and I kind of worked a couple different like bank jobs and stuff within finance and analytics and stuff.
And so that's before you found the resolution to your Crohn's disease.
That's right.
Oh wow. So then, yeah, like what does a day to day look like? And investment banking, there's a ton of money in investment banking.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that you were an investment banker. That's really interesting. So, like, what did a day to day look like when you were doing investment banking in China?
It was like 12 to 14-hour work days. Like, they were pretty intense. And trying to just like, I was using so much willpower to just try and get through. And it was weird because I remember my old self, like in China with all this energy, but back there again, I was getting burnt out pretty quickly. So I did it, but the Chinese culture is a little bit more laid back with the work environment. It can be very intense, but just the situation I was in, I was good at what I did if I prepared myself ahead of time. But like in the moment and trying to use willpower, like it was just burning me out. So I had to kind of, on all my off hours, work, do like all the office job stuff. And yeah, I kind of just got by. I was trying to hide it, but inside I was just like totally destroyed.
So would you get up at like what time did you get up?
You'd probably get up at like 5 or 6 a.m. You probably get to
And
work by like 7 a.m. You're probably working till 7 to 9 p.m.
just like straight to work or
Pretty much, yeah.
uh,
Not really much time for the gym. And a lot of these Chinese massage parlors are open 24/7, so that was a benefit to me.
and then like food, or you just like kind of eating whatever you can get your hands on, something quick.
Yeah, it's pretty much everything. Yeah, anything I can get my hands on. So that was kind of like the first couple of years being in limbo. Because like prior to that, I was researching stuff. Um, but honestly, like in that first period of time, it was a lot of just like going from doctor to doctor, trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And only when I got back from China, like that second time, did I really start the process of like taking more of the supplements, talking more with the one-on-one doctors, and going to the true experts.
Gotcha. So then you come back and you pick up another type of a finance job. What were you doing when you got back?
I was doing banking. So I was doing private equity and then also something known as like capital markets, which is kind of like bigger deals, but more on like the banking side of things. So there, the hours weren't like as crazy. You're maybe working like, maybe 8 to 9, 10 hours a day. Wasn't really as intense. And that part was kind of nice, like coming back and doing that. But I was only able to maintain that for so long. And then I was forced to quit like those jobs because I just, I couldn't maintain it. Like I was just making stupid, clumsy mistakes because my health just started kind of getting worse and worse.
So then you quit these jobs, and then after that, you find the resolution to, or your Crohn starts to disappear.
Yeah, that's when I start to like really begin more so on that journey. And that's when stuff is turning around for me.
Gotcha. So you quit the job, and then did you go like full time into like just trying to uh,
Exactly.
remedy your health?
Yeah, remedy health, 8 hours a day, just researching, just collecting tons of debt. I just knew like I could pay all this back later because I would just feel so good that it didn't matter, what amount of money I go into. Health is number one right now.
Got it. And then before we go into the sleep consultant, like what was your sleep like? Not only just like in the past like couple of years, but like throughout your whole life, did you have pretty bad sleep patterns, or did it kind of range depending upon the era?
Yeah, my sleep was usually mediocre. Maybe like a 7 out of 10. Wake up a couple times in the middle of the night, but it was only once that Crohn's really hit me and everything else that my sleep was like a 1 or 2 out of 10. Could hardly sleep, mind constantly racing, would take like 2 hours just to fall asleep. If you wake up 2 or 3 in the morning, mind's still racing, can't slow down the thoughts. And, I'm up until 6 a.m. Well, now the day started. I only got a couple hours of sleep and you just feel miserable in the process. So, yeah, that was, so fixing a lot of that piece, that helped a ton.
How did you end up fixing that? Was it a result of like take doing this protocol and then you started to feel better and then you were able to kind of relax a little bit more? Like how did that look?
Yeah, it wasn't like one specific pill or thing. It was like hormones and like hormone. I realized hormones, the gut, micronutrients, the brain, making it feel safe. These were all related to sleep, and better sleep then was all related to these things. So as I started working on each of these individually, in particular the hormones, was a massive thing for me because when my cortisol was so shot, blood sugar was a mess. By improving these, that's when everything was improving a lot more.
And I'm familiar like with how important sleep is, but now I'm realizing that like a listener might not be very apt or know a lot about like why sleep is so important. Like and it's very counterintuitive, I think, especially in Western culture. I think we sleep like crap and we don't realize how much that's impacting us. So like what is it about sleep?
Yeah, so sleep is like your ultimate recharge battery tool. During sleep, it's going to restore your body and it's going to restore your mind. So during deep sleep, there's a few phases of sleep, but we go from like light sleep to deep sleep to REM sleep, and the cycle repeats. And every sleep cycle is about 90 minutes. Now we need about 4, 5, 6 cycles of these cycles of 90 minutes to fully restart, recharge our body and brain. So what happens during sleep? Well, our for our mind during REM sleep, it's going to consolidate memories. There's something known as our lymphatic system, which is like these garbage truck cleaners that come to our body at nighttime in our brain, cleared all the gunk of the storage. So if you don't have good sleep, you're going to have more inflammation, more oxidative stress, and like it's just going to like the things you learned from the day before. It's not going to be processed as well the next day. Focus is going to be worse. All the brain healing properties that you need won't be there. So it's just your brain's not going to function. You're going to go towards coffee or something to feel better. And for our body too, we need it for like restoring our hormones, restoring our muscle, restoring, increasing our metabolism, putting our body into a building up healing state, recovery state, instead of a breaking down state. So think of throughout the day, your energy tank is slowly going down, and sleep is supposed to recharge that. If our sleep's not good, we're not going to recharge our tank. So then we go to the next day, and if our tank is deficient or close to zero, then we're going to drink coffee to go more into a deficit. Now we're in the red. So it's like we keep making withdrawals out of our bank account without actually replenishing anything. And we're going to have to pay debt on that too.
And you said 4 to 5 or 6 90-minute cycles of REM. So like how much sleep does that add up to?
Yeah, that's not just REM. That's just like 90 minutes. So like within a 90-minute cycle, you're going to be getting light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep. And there's like non-REM sleep. Like everything is completed typically within one cycle. So you could call that like a cycle or a spindle of sleep. And we want so you think 90 minutes, 3 hours, 4.5, 6 hours, 7.5 hours, 9 hours. So you always want roughly about 7 to 9 hours of sleep on average. Sometimes six is okay. Again, depends on genetics, but you need to get those to fully restore your body. And not just like the length of it, but the quality of that needs to be there too. You could be in bed for 9 hours, but if you're only getting 2, 3 cycles of sleep because you're having these micro awakenings throughout the night, you're not going to feel fully restored.
Okay. Well, let's get into that part of the story that you were about to dive into, and I kind of backtracked a little bit. Um, yeah.
Yeah, so this is where I realized I could start helping other people now. And I realized what could be a business that I could get into. And this is where I kind of discovered Ty Lopez, some of these other like OG marketer guys. Who else was there? I guess like Alex Becker, maybe Sam Ovens, but not quite yet. And I realized that I could like make a business out of this, and it also kind of was aligned to like the freedom and the sovereignty that I was after, and wanting to leave the 9 to 5 job. And I'm thinking, what can I focus on? There's a lot of personal trainers out there, so maybe not. There's a lot of nutritionists out there, maybe not. But nobody's talking about sleep, and sleep is one thing that really improved everything for me. So I realized that this was a major path that I could start taking. So I did all the typical, like, I think I got into Ty Lopez's, one of his early courses. over 10 years ago, or maybe 8 years ago. And is about like how to start a business. And one of the things that was popular at the time was like drop shipping. And so I started this drop shipping store of sleep products. And it was really cool because you would do like these Facebook ads. And then I remember getting my first order. And I think it was like 27 bucks. And I was so excited. I'm like, oh my God, like I can actually start making money online. And hearing that ching sound coming through and through Stripe, it was just like so crazy and insane to me that I could do such a thing. So yeah, it's just like running ads and doing that. I realized though that my issue was I have way too many products on the sleep store. Like I had 82 products on my sleep store, which you should only have three because one product you got to like test different angles, different marketing, who's going to use it. I was just thinking like more the merrier. But it was around this time too that I started getting more into copywriting. And so I started a Fiverr profile for copywriting, and it like picked up really fast. I think English was something that always came naturally to me, or like the writing side of it. So yeah, I just started getting really good quality orders coming in, starting at like $10, then working up to like, $15. And then all of a sudden I went up to like $300 for every 600 words, which was like a really good rate. But those beginning days, the copywriting was just like slugging it. But I realized that through building this business and everything else, going through all the health stuff and being only used to 5 to 10% improvements, I was very patient. So where somebody will like try something and not see the result right away and then give up, I was willing to put in that time because time was just moving slow for a bit. The last 3 years were like felt like utter shit for me. And there's no other way to go but one step in front of the other. So I just applied that same philosophy and it worked out well for me. And stuff, sales were coming through and the sleep store was making pretty good money on that. Fiverr's picking up. Algorithm was going in my favor. I made it to Fiverr Pro and top seller on Fiverr for the copywriting side of things. It was just so cool. Like I could talk to people from around the world who needed help in this one subject, and I could make money from it online. I'm like, how cool is this, and how different is this than working the 9 to 5 of what I was used to, and just seeing this and the high highs and the low lows, the people that I met, I knew that this was something that I was meant to do. And so through that lens, I was willing to go all in. As time went on, the drop shipping store fulfillment was a little difficult because I had to ship the products from China. Somebody would order on Facebook, put the order in from China, but it would take like 2 or 3 weeks for people to receive it from the ship in the USA. So somebody could also just order that same product on Amazon and get it like within a week or something. So I realized the way that was going, especially within sleep, I had to quickly change niches. So I'm like, well, why don't I start coaching within sleep too? And then I was looking at some different options, and I saw a couple of people doing it, but not many. These were just like one person was in Luxembourg, and they were making super good money, and it had this like really luxurious approach to it. And I remember pretending I was a customer and doing a fake call with her, and just like asking all the questions. And I felt like, wow, this is so cool. I definitely need to do something like this. So um, it was at that time that I realized I needed a new education. So I had all the finance stuff, but I really need to do a new education if I want to start doing lab testing on people. I had all this knowledge that I learned before. Unfortunately, it didn't give me a certification. But what do I do to pursue that? Like being, functional medicine practitioner, to be able to do the lab testing so I could actually do this. And then that was the next step that I pursued. So I think I spent like, it was a lot of money to pursue it, the education, and then just learning about business, more Ty Lopez and different courses I bought in the entrepreneurship journey, and just kind of tying it all together, slowly phasing out the drop shipping. But I learned a lot of stuff about sleep and business with the drop shipping store. And then I started helping out people for free to get some free testimonials for sleep who had sleep issues. So it was just like outreach on Facebook, outreach on LinkedIn. And then, you get the first couple people, turn those into testimonials. What are they looking for? And then I found that the URL, I was looking for a URL. I was like, what am I going to call this sleep business? And I think I did sleepconsultant.com, no dice. Other ones are like $5,000 for the domain. No thanks. And then the sleepconsultant.com popped up. I'm like, holy shit, this is like crazy. No way this is available right now. It was almost as if it was like meant to be. And the sleep consultant almost sounded better than sleep consultant, and it had a ring to it. So I did that, and along the same line, at the same time, I was working for this guy who he's probably still my favorite person I've ever worked with, or like one of my biggest idols today. He lived in Santa Monica, and what he basically did is he was a master copywriter, and what he would do is outreach to YouTube influencers with like millions of subscribers. So some of them could be like a DJ, or survivalist or a professional cook. And these would be skills that he personally wanted to learn, but he would reach out to those creators. There's like so many creators online, right? So these were the specific ones that he wanted to work with. And what he would do is he would send them an email, he would get on a call with them, and he would propose, you have this massive subscriber base. The average subscriber count would be like 1 to 3 million subscribers in general. Most of them would be located in the USA. He would create a course for them, for all of his followers. And he would also create like a really nice landing page in like in the right copywriting format. And he would take a revenue share of the courses that would sell. So I started working with this guy. We started working on some of the courses, and this was like my like seeing true money for the first time, like inflowing. Like this was one of the first experiences. We would do like launches. So we build like the course. I'd help with that. I'd be writing the sales page, and we would launch like all the email sequence and everything. Again, like the graphic design and like all parts of the team coming together, merging it, doing like the VSL page, and then it'd be launch time and go time. And I would see the Stripe account like within hours making like $75,000, and you just say like ching, 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 ching. I'm like, oh my god, this is crazy, and that showed me of like what's possible with this type of thing. So I was working more with him. I learned so much about copywriting while I was still doing the Fiverr thing, and yeah, just making like good money on Fiverr. I think I got up to on Fiverr like 10K a month, which was really good at the time. Like learning through him too. In the end, and then the other thing prior to that is I flew to Santa Monica to meet this guy, and he's like a 6'3" Chad looking guy, just like super cool. Like every guy would kind of desire to be this good looking Chad. Good Chad. And we just met at this place called I think it was called Earth Coffee in Santa Monica. First of all, first time in Santa Monica. This was prior to COVID too, and during this same trip, I went to go to an Elliott Hulse retreat actually, and this was up in California in the Palo Alto Mountains. And this was like all the Osho dynamic meditation and getting more into the body, like releasing, and just learning more with that. And this is at the same time when I'm working with like all these other people. So I started to really connect the dots here of what was possible, both on the business side and both on the health side and on the education of the functional medicine practitioner, and just bringing it all together. So yeah, that's when everything like started to come together quickly, and like meeting this guy in person, I'm like, wow, this guy has such a cool energy, and if he can do it, and he's living in like a really nice 3-bedroom property apartment overlooking all of like Santa Monica Beach, and I'm like, if this guy can do it, like now it's becoming tangible that I can really start making money in my business too. So I started to see like opportunity now, and like put the bad health stuff behind me, and now start focusing more on like actually being able to help people, and just seeing and having firsthand experience of other people doing it that I'm around. Um, it was just amazing. I'm like, I started meeting other like-minded people, and they were doing it, and they were saying how I could do it, like in the coaching space. And the sleep consult became available. All the copy for my website I learned from this guy that I was working with, and I made like really cool artistic sales pages. Um, yeah, it was just so cool, like following Perry Belcher and like these other copywriting OGs, and yeah, everything just kind of combined into each other. And the testimonials that I had from the free clients I had, then it just started turning into like pay clients. Start low and then started increasing it. It just grew from there.
So you're starting to throw around a lot of terms like VSL pages, copywriting, sales pages, Facebook ads. Got another visitor in my room. And you're kind of diving into this. Oh my gosh, diving into this whole new world, man, of marketing essentially and running a business and entrepreneurship. But like someone might be listening to this and be like, what is copywriting? What is a funnel? What is a VSL page? Like, if you had to put it in like layman's terms, like what you were doing, and drop shipping and running Shopify and a Stripe account, like these are all pretty niche terms that entrepreneurs and business owners understand. But like, what was this? What were these things that you
Yeah,
were doing?
and it's a good point. You become so used to like it's saying these terms all the time, you think everybody knows it. So let's start from the beginning. So what's drop shipping? Drop shipping is where you can basically buy a product super cheap and you sell it for a much higher price and you ship it to somebody. So it could be across any industry. And so you usually do like an ad on Facebook, let's say it's like a sleep mask. And I say in the ad, hey, buy this sleep mask. It helps you with this thing. And then I write. So copywriting is when you write words to sell, basically. Like that's essentially what it is. So you would write, and you can write words in a certain way, not like grade 12 English class where it's like Shakespeare and stuff, but actual words that what's called converting somebody. So how do you take someone that sees you for the first time? How do you convince them to buy something through the words that you type on, some ad that you're selling on Facebook? And I'm sure everybody's seen a Facebook ad. So I had to learn like what is the art of being able to take someone who's never heard of me and make them buy something from me. And knowing shipping would take this amount of time. So tapping into their emotions, tapping to everything else. And that's what the art is. And that's what copywriting basically is. So it's not copywriting like the legal copywriting, like that's one, but this is copywriting where you're like writing to sell, writing to close somebody with words, basically, convincing them to take an action, persuading them with words too. So it was learning that art. And through drop shipping, you would do a Facebook ad. I would, let's say the cost of the product I would buy it for would be like $5. I would sell it for like $30 on my store, my ad. So somebody sees my ad, they click on the ad, goes to my product page store, they order it, add to cart, they purchase it with a credit card. Boom, the money comes into my account. Now I get the order. Now I got to ship it to the person. So I order it from China. They've had something called Oberlo at the time. It's probably changed now. And that product would be shipped directly to their house. So, and they would get it like within a couple of weeks. And then, let's say it was $5. I sold it for 30. The difference is $25. I made a profit basically. So that was the idea of that. And the other term you said was like, what's a sales page? Probably everyone's probably seen a sales page of like, any product you're trying to sell. How do you sell it? You could just say, buy my thing. Well, you're probably not getting a lot of people that are going to buy it. So what do? You have to create a video and you have to create words to make them feel like they want to buy that thing. Well, there's an art and a science there too. You can write a page one way and out of 100 people, you might have 2 people that buy. But if you write it better, more persuasive, more engaging, you answer other questions, this goes back the art of doing this like 100 years. So if you can write things in a certain way out of those 100 people, instead of 2 people, maybe you have 10 people that buy that thing because you're just so much better at writing to persuade someone with words. So like a VSL is called a video sales letter. And that's just like, what is that video that would go on that sales page to convince someone to buy that thing? And there's like different, you have the hook and you have, the story you say, the close within that, the close of like getting someone to take action on that one thing. So those are all kind of main things. I think I covered it all. Is there anything else I'm missing?
I think you did. What does this like actually look like tangibly for you? Like, are you living in an apartment at this time? Like, grinding away on your laptop? Like, ordering
Yeah.
in Chipotle, getting DoorDash? Like, what does it kind of look like tangibly?
Yeah, I went pure monk mode. So I was living in a pretty small shared room. Uh, this is like the early days when money was first starting to come in. I was sleeping like on a mattress. This was inspired by the Alex Becker monk mode video. He says like make your personal living standards where you don't need a lot of expenses because then you can just go all in your business. And if anything tanks in your business, then you don't have to keep up the expensive car. You don't have to keep up the expensive apartment. You can take these risks and not have to worry about anything. So at the time, that's what I did. I could probably afford to live in a bigger place at the time, but I was like, let's try this out. So I went pure monk mode. I had a desk, I had a computer, I had my mattress, and I prioritize health though. Like health was very important to me. I spent a lot of money on that as health was improving. Um, yeah, and the money just went into that, and stuff started getting, you know, um, I was seeing progress really quickly around that time on the business side because I was just that's all I was doing. I purposely was living close to the gym, which had a steam room. I was paying quite a bit for the gym. But everything else that I needed, like the grocery store, was walking distance. I didn't have a car. I just purposely made it so I could walk everywhere to where I needed to go. And high productivity was just the natural default.
So that's a pretty counterintuitive approach. Like most people that age, they have a big car payment, a mortgage, all these really high expenses. But it sounds like you took a different approach, and instead of putting all your money and budgeting towards that, you decided I'm going to invest heavily into my health. And what made you decide to do that? Like, what line of thinking?
I started seeing this philosophy of like, opposed to chasing the outside things, what if I increase my inner engine? And what if I put the money, my investments towards increasing my inner engine? The external things are just going to be a natural byproduct of it. So I don't have to forcibly work on the externals and micromanage the externals, whether it's like buying a new car or buying like this to impress people. It was just let me focus so much on myself and make my own cup like overflow so much that it creates that same pull and magnetic effect where these opportunities would just come to me. And I didn't fully articulate like it just did now, but it was an inner knowing of just like that was the direction to go in. It was also just remembering of like the people that I met in China, what they were like. And I just wanted to be more like that. And was like buying a more expensive car going to get me closer to that? Probably not. But increasing how I felt inside and that the extension of that higher performance and brain power and my inner machinery just more optimized, it was going to just give me all that as a natural default anyway. So the ROI was just obvious to me.
Yeah, I mean, from that perspective, it just makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Um, so you meet this guy, you fly out to Santa Monica. What was his name, by the way?
His name was Wade Alters.
Wade Alters. Okay. And so you fly out to Santa Monica, and you're one on one with him, and he's showing you a Stripe account. He's working with all these influencers, doing this unique type of marketing. And what do you do after you start seeing $75,000 flow through a Stripe account in just a few hours?
Yeah, I'm just like totally amazed. I remember sending him messages like, dude, this is insane. I have never seen this before. And he's been doing it for years, so this is just like another Tuesday morning for him. But like for me to see it, it was just like absolutely insane. It was very similar to, like to being in China for the first time and like seeing the abundance in these people and everything. But this was like equally on the business side. And I felt like how lucky am I to work with somebody and to see all this happening at once. I just felt extremely like a gifted opportunity that was given to me, and it just further cemented this this reality is so possible. And it also felt weird because nobody else saw it. Like it seemed like there was all these NPCs at the time marking their little 9 to 5 jobs, and it felt so obvious. Like how come more people aren't doing this? And I literally had to fly down to the USA from Canada to just see this opportunity like I never saw it before in Canada. And it was almost through the same paradigm of like everyone's going to the doctor to get these pills. No one's asking questions of deeper what's going on. So there was just all these examples that were reinforced to me of like there's just another way of doing things and it works and it's obvious and no one else is doing it. So opposed to relying on like people for my view of the world, I have to one, search out the right people that I want, and two, start relying on myself for those answers.
And so, like with the sleep consultant, were you doing the sleep consultant at this time?
Uh, Early stages. So it was like building the website. Um, I think I started working with some people for free, just trying to experiment and see what works for them, improve their sleep, like just basic things like blue light, not eating too close to bedtime, all this stuff without lab testing. And I also started around this time the functional medicine new education.
And like, what made you want to work with people for free?
I realized that well, it was one piece of feedback that Ty Lopez gave. I'll always remember that. And then also me, I had some imposter syndrome. I'm like, well, who am I to help people sleep? Like, I'm not a sleep doctor, like who can, um, I don't have like a sleep laboratory where people can come to and I can do sleep testing on them. Like, who am I to just tell people how they can sleep better? So, but like talking to so I'll go back through this. I realized like, who am I to do this? So let's start working for people with people for free. And I didn't feel like I was entitled to charge yet because I didn't have that experience until I actually got results for people. And I didn't have a formulated system yet to help people. Like I knew it worked for me, but I had no idea it was going to help other people in the process too. Like maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. So let's just test the waters and see what would happen. So for the first couple free people, it was like really working really quickly. And these were just the basics too. And I had like the future line in mind of like, if I start doing this testing in addition to what I'm already helping them with and making it super hyper customized, this thing is going to explode. Not only in the results, but like the quality is just going to be so high at the same time. So that's where I started doing those for free, and I just saw the benefit of it. But I also got feedback from other people, like, anytime you start a business, you need to get the testimonials. Just work for them for free for a period of time. Then, if they get them results, then offer an upsell down the road.
What were some of those initial like transformations that you made with those free customers? Like you said, just implementing the basics seemed to be
Yeah.
pretty powerful for people. So like, what did that look like?
There's one guy who was pre-diabetic. He was around 60 years old, and he was on a lot of medication. Like we're talking like 8+ pills to manage the. I think he was even diabetic at that point. Um, he couldn't sleep. He was on anti-anxiety medication, and he asked me. He's like, "Should I get off all my medications and go the natural route?" And I'm like, "No, that's between you and your doctor. Like, I'm just telling you these things of what you can try." But what I was telling him to do, which was like, don't eat too close to bedtime. When you first wake up, expose your eyes to the sun. Blue light blocking glasses, wear a sleep mask, essential oils, hot cold stuff, meditation, just all those basic things. Suddenly, all of his blood markers through his regular doctor started to improve. And he himself wanted to come off the medication. Like he was just so sick of it. So he wanted to do whatever he could to get off those. And sure enough, he did. He started losing weight because during sleep improved. So his hormones improved. So metabolism improved. He was able to get more exercise, just walk. He had more energy. So like everything he started feeding into everything else. Diet improved. He was becoming a better father. And then yeah, he eventually got off all medications but one, just like really low dose, just for like minor cholesterol stuff. And I was like, wow, that's crazy what I was able to help him achieve. And that was like a really good testimonial. And he gave me a lot of referrals after that that were paid. So that was just the power of just like having a really good system and knowing like, okay, if that worked, I should probably keep these parts of my system, and this is probably going to be part of my system. And then you work for somebody else. Maybe some part will work, some part won't work. And then it's learning how to like adapt it to each person and who they are, and the things that they're going to follow based on their personality. So that was like just a new layer that I eventually had to learn, just like being a good coach in not just telling them what to do. Part of my system is just pure facts, but like how do I make it so they're accountable and everything else too.
What was that experience like? Like learning how to become a coach?
Beginning frustrating, to be honest, because you'd have people who would like you would give the stuff to. I'm too tired. I can't do that. My wife says I shouldn't be eating this food. I can't exercise. The gym close to me is like too far away. It was just like all these hiccups. So it was just like in the beginning, trying to manage all that was, as a coach, it was just like, I'm not just helping people sleep. I'm trying to manage their emotions and almost become their borderline therapist right now. So like, how do I avoid this? And this came like later on with clients, but I realized that I was just taking on the wrong clients, that I knew deep down inside of me that they just were going to be a pain to work with. I wanted to help everybody truly, But looking back, it wasn't like my type of person. I wanted somebody who was more of like the person that I was sort of becoming, which is more like the entrepreneur, CEO, founder type. And I worked with a couple of these guys already, and they were just such a joy to work with. They were like, they completed everything I told them. They followed the steps. They were so thankful. They asked me if I wanted a video testimony from them. They just made the process so seamless, just like awesome clients. And then you would just have other people who would want to complain all the time, or they would ask in the sales call about like refund policies and like every which way they could to like get out of it. How much work would it take? How many hours a week do I have to spend on this thing? It just through all that, it was just red flag after red flag. But I took them on anyway because I wanted them as a client. And the beginning stages, you're just trying to take on anyone that you can. So that's kind of what I did. But then you learn like who you want to work with, who you don't want to work with. But then it's just like optimizing the system. So it's learning about their personality. Uh, what are the things that could potentially set them back, and like how do we get around that, and how do we work through that together? So that became part of the onboarding process, and like what's important to them, what are their values, and like how do we optimize the program around their values. So it wasn't just the core system to improving sleep by itself, but then like what can we layer on it so it fits their schedule. So then it was like adding in, okay, what's their Google Calendar look like, and how do I like fix their Google Calendar so I tell them what to do when they first wake up, what do they do before they take the kids to school. And so it was just customizing it to them, and they really appreciated that because it was all based on them and their schedule.
So it sounds like you had some people that were coachable, some people who weren't coachable. So like what did you learn through that process of like what makes someone coachable and then why would someone want to be coachable in the first place?
I think a big one why people want to be coachable is pain. They're willing to do whatever it takes to get out of it, to get out of that pain. But they are not always coachable. Someone can be in pain, but not always be coachable. And I realized like it was the people that had been through struggle themselves, or like they manage a bunch of people or a team anyway, that they have to become that person that I need to become when working with people too. So like they're dealing with employees who have issues, they're dealing with these setbacks, they have to keep a good cool, and as a result they have good and high emotional intelligence. And so they were the people that were the most coachable because they were willing, they had a very good clear objective view of reality of knowing what it would take to get the results that they needed in their life. But the people who had more of a delusion of like they're so used to taking a pill and they would see results from that like within that day or the next day, and they came to me trying to expect that same result, those expectations were just off. So I realized that I had to set my expectations the right way. Um, Realistically, like how long would it take for them? Here's what we're going to do, stuff like that.
And then like what did your well, first of all, like why would someone want to develop like a coachable personality, like to become someone who is coachable?
I think for them, it's because they realize I think somebody who has been uh, just not able to get the results that they're looking for, and they've tried everything themselves, they finally have to admit to themselves that they need external help. And that means like kind of just bowing down to whatever that person tells you, not in like a servant way, but just listening to them and doing what they say, and realizing that that's probably going to help you more so than getting in the way of your own ego and getting in your own way and having like being so convicted in your way of doing things. Like you realize that that's not going to get you the result, and going to people and paying money to them who will get you the result in a fast way will, and knowing that through their expertise of listening to them, that's just going to be the best path forward. But I think sometimes people have to do it themselves and be hitting their head against the wall so many times where they almost give up. Um, and that's where you go for external help.
And then like what did a day to day look like for you as a sleep consultant? Like what are you doing every day? Like you wake up and like what did your kind of your routine look like?
Yeah, so I'd wake up, I would, in the morning time, I would do a creative project. So that would be like, I would do 4 hours of deep work every morning, no sales calls, no nothing. So that would be like a sales page. That would be maybe like I was doing copywriting at the time too. So be a copywriting project, or it would be like trying to plan out something for the business, or it might be like doing direct messaging outreach for a period of time, just like being condensed for a certain number of hours. It was a lot of things like that in the morning time. And then my meetings would be from like 12 to 5 p.m. every single day, except Sunday I would take totally off. And then after 6 p.m., sometimes I might do a bit of work, but for the most part, that's when I would like eat dinner, unwind, chill out, relax, and then go to bed at like 9 p.m.
What were you eating during this time? Did you have like a favorite meal go to that you'd make?
I would love like salmon. I ordered a lot of like grass fed steaks, beef, and they'd be delivered to my door, vacuum sealed, frozen. So it would be so convenient. I never have to go to the grocery store. Literally just take it out, thaw it out, and then cook it, and then be good to go. But it's yeah, like a lot of fish, a lot of clean meats, organic, and I felt great doing it. A lot of like green shakes, just everything to give me the supercharged power that I need. And I knew because it was like customized to my biology too.
Did you kind of optimize your life around, being able to stay in monk mode, stay grinding, staying in a workflow, like finding all these different systems and processes that you can implement in your life to stay focused and stay on task?
Yeah, so a lot of it was trying to find ways to not use so much willpower, but like relying on my systems. But like the quote that had always stuck with me, I remember around that time is we don't rise to the level of our expectations. We fall to the level of our systems. And so in days when I didn't feel 10 out of 10, I wanted to build systems that I could fall down to that would just keep everything moving. So I didn't have to rely on like productivity or willpower as much and like push through this grinding mentality. I could instead work smart and create these systems, just like I remember the people in China, to like to get like the most amount done in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of effort. So this like idea kind of became seductive to me.
Yeah. Well, let's take a quick 5 minute break.
Cool.
All right, so we only got a few minutes left here, and with the remaining time, I'd really like to kind of just explore your time as the sleep consultant a little bit deeper. And yeah, I mean, so you get your first few customers and you're offering a free service, and then you get your first big testimonial. You're kind of learning, what is it like to actually be a coach, which was probably like a little bit of a shock to you because you're just like, oh, I'm just going to sell this sleep product. I'm going to help people with their sleep. Not even thinking like, oh, I actually have to be a coach. I have to hold people accountable. And, how did that progression look like for you, like in terms of becoming a better coach?
Yeah, it was one, like I just said, learning who I wanted to work with and not work with, who most resonated for me. And then how do like how do I take what's in my brain and make people take action on it? And it first started where it was like, okay, I have all this knowledge in my brain. Let me just give it to the people and hope that they take action. So that was like the first phase of the coaching. But then you realize, well, they don't actually always do what you tell them to do. They say it's hard or they didn't follow it. Not everybody, but just like certain things. And then it's realizing, okay, well, how can I take what I say? It's not just about the knowledge, but how can I make them feel motivated, see a future version of themselves that they'll actually want to become, and motivate them along the way, keep them accountable, and show them the better way. So it was my job to bring them through the entire process to help them like mentally, physically, knowing what they're doing throughout the day, and helping like in the initial stages know what all the parts of their life are that could potentially hold them back, whether it's family, relationships, work, and like work around that or work through it and give them ways to like navigate that too. So it was helping them like through their own personal issues, like logistically that they had to work through. And when I did that, then we found solutions to it. Then everything else just improved along the way too.
What are some examples of like the accountability and like motivational systems that you'd implement to help people through that process?
A lot of the calls that we would start, like I would give them unlimited access to me on WhatsApp for the accountability. piece or just support. But it would be things, for example, like we would set the beginning sessions of like who do they ultimately want to become, and there would be like an identity associated with that, like who is their ultimate self, and that would always be like the North Star. So we would work on that, and if like they could become that person, that thing, all the materialistic things would follow through from that, but like their core identity, that would always be the anchor. So I would show them like the person we're becoming is through the things that we're doing to become that thing. And so that would really help them along the way, because no matter how they were feeling, even if they felt really crappy one day, looking at that gave them perspective of like, okay, I have these short-term cravings for this food right now that I probably should be eating, but now I have this like anchor of like that person I'm becoming, and that's more important than eating this chocolate cake right now. So that would
That's
be a big
super.
piece.
That's super cool because I know as you're going through your Crohn's process, you had mentioned like your anchor was almost like China and your identity that you had based yourself in China. And now you're basically taking that principle that you followed through your journey and now you're kind of helping other people to do that themselves.
Totally. Yeah, that's it.
So that's pretty cool. Um, and like what other things were you doing to help people like grow stronger in their identity?
A big one would be a lot of people had trauma, to be honest. So I along my journey, I discovered a lot of other people who were like more of a therapist or bodywork person. So I kind of developed this like Avengers team. So for some clients, I could refer out. So some people would have these limited beliefs or like trauma patterns that they would just keep reliving again and again. So whenever they would try to get better, it was like their unconscious mind would self sabotage them. So I would refer out, and these people would work with others, to help them with that. I could too, but like that was my primary expertise. And people just started seeing better results because they didn't have that voice in the back of their mind always saying that they can't do it because they don't have these trauma patterns that are running them. So that was like another big thing too. So it was like the lows that would compromise them, we brought up. And then the highs, we also increased too. So showing them who they can become, and then the floor that they would drop to, we would make it not so low, like to where it like would pull them down like a heavy weighted anchor. So working on both those together really helped. And then it was just like the ongoing consistency. Hey, checking in, how you doing? And then whatever issue they're dealing with, we just work through that.
I know you said you were doing copy on the side at the beginning. Was there a point where you stopped writing copy and then, just went full force into sleep consultant?
To be honest, I was always doing copy. Like even to this day, I still do copy on the side. Maybe not as much, but back then I was still doing copy quite a bit too. And I was trying to decide like, well, do I go full into the copywriting side of things? Because I heard stories where, the guy that I was working with, Wade Alters, was making a lot of money. And I heard stories of like, if you write a sales page for somebody, and let's say it makes $100,000, you can take like a revenue cut from that. So let's say you charge $20,000 for a sales page, and then for every sale that you make 10% of that. Well, you just made like $35,000 just from that alone. So I was like, wow, there's a lot of potential in copywriting, but should I go that? Should I go more the sleep consultant? But then there was kind of talk of like AI coming out, copywriting not being as, prevalent. Like there was a risk there. So I always had the copywriting thing going, but I really wanted to focus more on the sleep because I found that was where more of my passion was. And I can do the copywriting within the sleep anyway through my own marketing and everything else too.
Yeah. Do you think continuously writing copy helped you in terms of your ability to be able to communicate your message online and just keep getting better and better at that?
Totally. It sharpens the sword, and copywriting was always something that I wanted to do. I felt like if I didn't copyright for a while, I was like, I need to write copy because I want to be able to sharpen that sword. It helps you express your ideas, and it just keeps you mentally sharp. And I just love the art of it. Like, imagine somebody has a thought, they never met you before. You convince them to take an action based on the words that you say, through you understanding them, using empathy and tapping into those primal parts, the reptilian parts of their brain to make them feel an emotion. Like, I thought there's nothing cooler than that. So combining that with like the health and the sleep stuff, I think it's really sweet.
Yeah, I mean, if you compare like the online marketing world to like the physical marketing world, like billboards and literally like talking directly to people, it's a completely different experience because when you're marketing online, the central piece of that is writing copy if people are reading. Otherwise, you can do like video. But like, how else do you think writing copy has impacted your life in terms of business or any other areas?
I think putting myself in other people's shoes, like what is their blueprint? What is their avatar? Because every avatar, like avatar meaning like, are they 45 years old, a husband of two kids with a wife that lives in Idaho? Or are they like a 28-year-old, single bachelor living in New York, who's trying to get peak performance? Like everybody has a different blueprint of thoughts that are going through their mind. And if I can relate to them through the words that I write, I have to get out of my own head about what I think should be the right thing and instead put myself into their shoes and then write from that point of view and write as if I'm speaking to like one person. And when I do it that way, then you just see the results, and it's more personalized and it's tailored and you make them feel good, you let them know what they're missing, you make them experience FOMO, you bring it in with like, the solution of how you can help them and increasing the pain, increasing the pleasure, showing them what's possible. It's just like all these embedded characteristics of copy that will make somebody take action. It's a really cool process.
So you're basically trying to motivate someone into like a different emotional state.
Yeah,
And do you think that helped you like motivate yourself and get yourself into good emotional states by understanding those systems?
definitely. I think so because if I learned that through copy, if it if it basically works on the human condition, it works on our monkey brains, then it's probably going to work on my monkey brain too. And so, learning copy I was better able to understand my emotions and like also too like when I felt like I had the severe trauma and I was walking through like the body stuff and everything else, I had to like articulate what I was feeling inside because it would sometimes just feel like, well, there's kind of like this weird pain here or like there's kind of a tension in my stomach right now and it's hard to use words to describe that. Like I have the feeling, but how do I express what that feeling is in words? And so to be able to do that and then bring that out into copy, you can relate better to other people too, and you can relate better to yourself in the process. And I've definitely noticed an improvement in like just my ability to do that as time went on.
Yeah. I know we're coming up on time here. I want to respect you and your time. I know you got a meeting coming up. For everyone listening, we're going to have a part three scheduled, and we're going to go deeper into Riley's life. We're going to talk about his transition from sleep consultant to superhuman and kind of dive a little bit deeper into his current situation and what he's got going in the future. So thank you everyone for listening. Riley, appreciate you, man. Thank you for being here and being on the Good Fruit Show. It means a lot.
Thanks, CJ. I really appreciate it.